The baby's fever burned at 104 degrees, and the nearest doctor was 15 miles through a blizzard that could kill a man in minutes. Wade Mercer had no choice but to leave his dying infant daughter in the hands of a woman whose real name he didn't even know. A stranger who'd appeared at his ranch 3 weeks ago with nothing but lies and desperation in her eyes. Outside, the Wyoming storm screamed like something alive. Inside, Clara Bennett held that burning child against her chest and made a promise she'd broken 1,000 times before. This time, she wouldn't run. If you want to know whether she kept that promise, stay with me until the end and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The woman appeared at Black Hollow Ranch on a Tuesday afternoon when the sun sat mean and white above the Absaroka Range, baking the dirt until it cracked like old leather. Wade Mercer was halfway through cursing at a fence post that refused to stay vertical when he saw her, just a dark shape wavering in the heat shimmer where the road dissolved into nothing. At first, he thought she was a trick of exhaustion. He'd been up since 4 that morning trying to fix everything that was broken on the ranch, which meant he'd be up until 4 the next morning too, and the morning after that, in an endless cycle of barely keeping disaster at arm's length. The fence, the roof over the barn, the pump that coughed rust into the water trough. His life had become a series of failing systems, and he'd stopped believing in things that appeared out of nowhere looking like salvation. But she kept coming. Solid. Real. A woman walking alone across the kind of country that swallowed people whole. Wade straightened up slow, one hand still gripping the post hole digger, the other instinctively moving toward the rifle he'd left leaning against the fence rail 15 feet away. You didn't survive out here by assuming strangers meant well. The frontier had a way of sorting people into 2 categories, those who respected its brutality and those who died learning about it. She was close enough now that he could make out details. Thin, but not fragile. There was steel in the way she moved, like someone who'd walked a long time and wasn't planning to stop until her body gave out. Her dress had probably been nice once, maybe even pretty, but the trail had beaten it into something closer to a rag. She carried a carpet bag that looked like it had been dragged through hell, and her dark hair hung in tangled ropes past her shoulders. What stopped Wade's hand from reaching the rifle was her face. Not because she was beautiful, though she might have been under all that dust and exhaustion. It was her eyes. They had that hollow look he'd seen in the mirror every morning for the past 8 months. The look of someone who'd already survived the worst thing they could imagine and was just going through the motions of whatever came after. She stopped about 20 feet from the fence line. Her lips were cracked, bleeding at the corners. When she spoke, her voice came out like gravel scraping across wood. Water. Not a request. Not a demand. Just a fact, stated plain. Water was the difference between standing and falling, and she was asking which one he was going to let happen. Wade glanced back toward the house. Through the window, he could see Ellie moving around inside, probably burning whatever she was trying to cook for supper. The girl was 10 years old and doing her damnedest to be the woman of the house, a job that was crushing her a little more each day. Behind that window, in the back room, the baby was crying again. Always crying. That sound had become the soundtrack to Wade's life, proof that he was failing at the one thing that mattered. He looked back at the woman. She hadn't moved, hadn't begged, just stood there waiting for his decision with the kind of patience that came from expecting nothing. Well, Wade said, setting down the post hole digger. Come on, then. The inside of the house smelled like burning meat and sour milk and desperation. Wade saw the woman's nose wrinkle slightly as she stepped through the door, but she didn't say anything. Smart. He was aware his home looked like the losing end of a fight. Dishes piled in the basin, laundry draped over every chair, and a fine layer of grime on surfaces that used to shine when Sarah was alive. Sarah. Even thinking her name hurt like pressing on a bruise that never healed. Ellie looked up from the stove where something that might have once been beans was turning black in the pan. The girl had her mother's eyes, sharp and green and currently full of suspicion. Who's that? Ellie asked, not bothering with politeness. She'd learned early that the world didn't reward good manners. Someone who needs water, Wade said, moving to the pump by the basin. Get a cup. Get it yourself, Ellie shot back, but she was already reaching for the tin cup on the shelf, her small hands moving with the quick efficiency of someone who'd grown up too fast. She thrust it toward the woman without meeting her eyes. The stranger took it and drank, not gulping, Controlled, measured sips, like someone who knew that drinking too fast after real thirst could make you sick. Wade watched her throat work, watched the way her fingers trembled slightly around the cup. She drained it and held it out for more without saying anything. Wade refilled it twice more before she finally spoke. "Thank you." Her voice was clearer now, less rough. There was an accent underneath it, something Eastern, maybe. Education. This woman had been someone before the frontier had stripped her down to essentials. In the back room, the baby's crying cranked up another notch, going from miserable to furious. The woman's eyes flicked toward the sound, then back to Wade. "How old?" "6 months." Wade felt the familiar weight of failure settle on his shoulders. "She's teething. Won't take the rag I give her. Won't settle down. Won't—" He stopped himself. This stranger didn't need to hear about his inadequacies as a father. "May I?" the woman asked, and before Wade could figure out what she was asking permission for, she'd set down the cup and moved toward the crying. "Now, wait just a—" Wade started, but she was already through the doorway. He followed, Ellie right behind him, both of them ready to yank this stranger away from the baby if she tried anything wrong. But what they saw stopped them cold. The woman had picked up Rose. That's what Sarah had wanted to name her, Rose, like that would somehow make this harsh country softer, and was holding her against her shoulder, one hand supporting the baby's head, the other rubbing slow circles on her back. She was making a low humming sound, not quite a song, just a vibration that seemed to sink into the baby's bones. And Rose, who'd been screaming for the better part of 3 hours, who Wade had walked and bounced and pleaded with until his arms ached, suddenly went quiet. Just like that. Quiet. The woman kept humming, kept swaying in that gentle rhythm, and Rose's little fist uncurled from where it had been clenched against her own face. The baby's eyes, red and swollen from crying, started to drift closed. "Jesus Christ," Wade breathed. Ellie grabbed his arm, her fingernails digging in. "Pa, who is she?" "I don't know, honey." They stood there watching this stranger work some kind of magic that Wade had forgotten existed. When Rose was fully asleep, the woman carefully laid her back in the cradle, tucking the thin blanket around her with practiced hands. She straightened up and turned to face Wade and Ellie, and for the first time since she'd arrived, something that might have been a smile touched the corners of her mouth. "You're burning your supper," she said to Ellie. The smell hit Wade a second later, smoke, beans scorching to the bottom of the pan. Ellie swore, actually swore, a word she'd picked up from the ranch hands, and ran for the stove. The stranger followed her, and Wade trailed after both of them, feeling like he'd lost control of his own house. By the time he reached the kitchen, the woman had taken the pan off the heat and was assessing the damage with the critical eye of someone who'd salvaged plenty of bad situations. "It's ruined," Ellie said, her voice cracking. "Everything I make is ruined. I don't." The tears started before she could stop them, and Wade felt his heart crack a little more. His daughter, trying so hard to be grown, breaking down over burned beans. "Hey now," he started, reaching for her, but the stranger got there first. "Nothing's ruined that can't be fixed," the woman said, her voice firm but not unkind. She pointed at the pan. "Bottom's burned, sure, but the top layer's fine. We scrape off the good part, add some water to thin it out, mix in whatever you've got in the pantry to stretch it. Won't be fancy, but it'll fill bellies." Ellie stared at her. "Who are you?" "Someone who's burned her share of meals," the woman said. Then, after a pause, "My name's Clara Bennett." "That your real name?" Ellie asked, and Wade wanted to hush her but didn't because it was a fair question. People who showed up out of nowhere usually had reasons for it. Clara met Ellie's eyes steady. "It's the one I'm using now." Honest, at least. Wade respected that more than a pretty lie. "I'm Ellie. That's my pa, Wade. And that's Rose, but you already met her." Ellie wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, leaving a streak of soot across her cheek. "You got anywhere to go?" Clara shook her head. "You got any money?" Another head shake. "You running from something?" "Ellie," Wade said sharply, but Clara held up a hand. "Yes," she said simply. "Isn't everyone out here running from something?" Ellie considered this. Mama used to say the frontier's where people go when everywhere else gives up on them. "Your mama sounds like she was smart." "She's dead." The words dropped like stones into deep water. Clara didn't flinch, didn't offer empty sympathy. She just nodded like Ellie had told her something important and true. "Mine too," Clara said quietly. Wade cleared his throat. "Miss Bennett." "Clara. Clara, I appreciate you helping with the baby, but I can't. We don't have anything to offer. No work, no money for wages. I'm barely keeping this place running as it is." Clara looked around the kitchen, at the dishes, the burned pan, the exhaustion carved into every surface. When she looked back at Wade, something had shifted in her expression. "I don't need wages," she said. "Just a place to sleep. Barn's fine, and food when there's extra." "In exchange for what?" "Whatever needs doing." Wade laughed, sharp and bitter. "Lady, everything needs doing. This place is held together with spit and prayer, and I'm running out of both." "Then I'll start with supper," Clara said, already moving toward the stove like the matter was settled. "Ellie, show me what you've got in the pantry. Wade, that's your name, right? Wade, you get back to whatever you were doing outside. Your daughter and I have work to do." She said it with such complete authority that Wade found himself nodding before he realized what he was agreeing to. Ellie looked at him, eyes wide with questions he couldn't answer. He gave her what he hoped was a reassuring nod and headed back outside, because the fence still needed fixing and the cattle still needed tending and his life still needed holding together, stranger or no stranger. But as he picked up the post hole digger, he could hear voices drifting through the open window. Clara asking questions, Ellie answering, and underneath it, impossibly, the sound of his daughter almost laughing. He drove the digger into the hard earth and tried not to think about how long it had been since he'd heard that sound. Clara was up before sunrise. Wade knew this because he was up before sunrise. He was always up before sunrise. And when he stumbled into the kitchen in the gray pre-dawn light, there she was. She'd somehow located the coffee pot, figured out his miserable excuse for coffee grounds, and had a pot brewing that actually smelled like something worth drinking. The kitchen table had been cleared. The dishes from last night were washed and stacked, and she was elbow-deep in bread dough, kneading with the kind of steady rhythm that spoke of thousands of loaves made in another life. "Morning," she said without looking up. Wade grunted something that might have been words. He wasn't ready for conversation. He poured coffee into a chipped mug and stood there watching this stranger work in his kitchen like she'd been doing it for years. "You sleep at all?" he finally asked. "Some." She folded the dough, pressed, turned, folded again. Her hands were quick and sure. "Barn's comfortable enough. It's got holes in the roof. I've slept worse places." Wade believed it. There was something in the way she moved, efficient, contained, like someone used to making do with nothing. He'd seen that quality in men who'd survived the war, or prospectors who'd spent years in the mountains. Survival left marks that didn't wash off. "You didn't have to do all this," he said, gesturing at the clean kitchen. "I know. I told you I can't pay." "I know that too." Clara shaped the dough into a round, set it in the pan he hadn't used since Sarah died. "But I can't sit still. Never been good at it, so if I'm going to be here, I might as well make myself useful." "How long are you planning on being here?" She met his eyes then, and he saw something flicker in them. Fear, maybe, or just bone-deep weariness. "As long as you'll let me stay. And then I'll move on." She said it like it was inevitable, like she'd been moving on her whole life and expected nothing different. Wade drank his coffee and thought about Sarah, about how she used to say that people showed you who they were in the first 5 minutes. You just had to pay attention. This woman had shown up with nothing, asked for water, calmed a screaming baby, salvaged burned beans, and was now making bread at 5 in the morning because she couldn't sit still. "There's work," he heard himself say. "More than one person can handle, and I'm drowning in it. If you're serious about staying, I could use the help. Can't pay much, enough for basics maybe, when I sell cattle, but you'd have a room in the house, not the barn. Meals. A place to be for a while." Clara's hands stilled on the dough. "Why?" "Because my daughter actually smiled yesterday, first time in 8 months. And because Rose slept 4 hours straight last night, which means I slept 4 hours straight, which means I might actually live through this week." He set down his mug. "And because you're right. Everybody out here is running from something. I don't need to know what you're running from, long as you don't bring it to my doorstep." "I can't promise that," Clara said quietly. The past has a way of catching up. Then we'll deal with it when it gets here. Wade surprised himself with the words. He wasn't usually an optimist. What do you say? Clara looked down at the bread dough, at her hands covered in flour. When she looked back up, her jaw was set in a way that made Wade think of soldiers deciding to stand their ground. I say yes, she said. I say thank you. And I say I'll work harder than anyone you've ever hired. Wasn't hiring, Wade said. Was just trying to survive a little better. Then I'll help you survive. They shook on it, her hand small and flour-dusted in his, and Wade felt something shift. Not hope, exactly. He wasn't ready for hope, but maybe just the smallest crack in the wall of exhaustion that had been crushing him since Sarah died. Behind them, Rose started to fuss. Clara wiped her hands and moved toward the sound before Wade could, and he let her because she was better at it than him, and he was tired of pretending otherwise. Ellie appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Is she staying? For now, Wade said. His daughter looked at Clara, then back at him. Mama wouldn't like it. The words hit Wade in the chest. I know, honey. But Mama's dead, Ellie continued, her voice matter-of-fact in the way children could be about terrible truths. And we're not. And I'm tired of burning everything I try to cook. Me too, sweetheart. Ellie walked to the table and sat down, watching Clara move around the kitchen with Rose on her hip. You gonna leave? She asked Clara directly. Clara paused. Probably, she said, and Wade appreciated the honesty even as it made his stomach clench. Most people do. Mama didn't leave, Ellie said fiercely. She died. That's different. You're right, that is different. And if you leave on purpose, I'll hate you. Ellie, Wade started, but Clara cut him off. That's fair, she said to Ellie. If I leave on purpose, you have every right to hate me. I'd hate me too. Ellie studied her for a long moment. Okay, she finally said. You can stay, but I'm watching you. I'd expect nothing less, Clara said. And just like that, it was settled. A stranger had become part of the household, at least temporarily, and Wade tried not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. He had cattle to tend and fences to mend, and a whole list of disasters waiting to happen. Worrying about one more thing would have to wait. The days fell into a rhythm that Wade hadn't thought possible. Clara moved through the house like a quiet storm, fixing things he'd learned to ignore. Curtains got washed. Floors got swept. Meals appeared at regular times and actually tasted like food instead of punishment. But it was the small things that got under Wade's skin. The way she'd repaired Ellie's favorite blanket, the one Sarah had made, sitting up by lamplight to patch the holes with careful stitches. The way she sang to Rose in the mornings, old songs Wade didn't recognize but that made the baby coo and kick her feet. The way she'd taken over the vegetable garden that Sarah had planted and Wade had let die, coaxing life back into the dirt with a stubbornness that bordered on defiance. She never talked about where she came from, never mentioned family or a husband or what had driven her to walk alone across country that killed men in groups. Wade didn't push. He'd meant what he said about not needing to know her past, and he had enough practice living with ghosts that he recognized when someone else was doing the same. Ellie, predictably, was less patient. You ever been married? She asked Clara one afternoon while they were hanging laundry. Wade was nearby, fixing the chicken coop and trying not to look like he was listening. Once, Clara said. What happened to him? He died. How? Ellie, Wade called. That's enough. It's fine, Clara said, pinning a sheet to the line. He got sick. Fever took him in 3 days. Sometimes that's all it takes. Were you sad? Clara's hands paused on the clothesline. Yes, she said, and no, it's complicated. Grown-ups always say that when they don't want to explain things. Fair point, Clara smiled slightly. I was sad because dying's a hard thing to watch, but I wasn't sad the way I should have been, and that made me feel worse than the dying did. Does that make sense? Ellie thought about it. You didn't love him. I thought I did. Turned out I didn't know what love was supposed to feel like. Clara grabbed another sheet. Turns out a lot of people get married without knowing that. Mama loved Pa, Ellie said fiercely, like Clara had suggested otherwise. I'm sure she did. And Pa loved Mama. I can see that. Clara looked over at Wade, who quickly found something fascinating about the chicken wire he was untangling. This whole place still has her in it. That's how you know love was real. Ellie was quiet for a moment. Do you think she'd be mad that you're here? Wade tensed, waiting for Clara's answer. I think, Clara said carefully, that she'd want her children taken care of. And if I can help with that, then no. I don't think she'd be mad. But you're not staying, Ellie said. You said you'd probably leave. I did say that. So what's the point of fixing things and cooking and making Rose stop crying if you're just going to go away? Clara set down the laundry basket. She knelt in the dirt so she was eye level with Ellie, not talking down to her like a child. Wade saw his daughter's spine stiffen, ready for disappointment. The point, Clara said, is that right now, in this moment, I can help. Maybe that's all we get. Moments. And maybe that has to be enough. That's a stupid answer. Probably, but it's the only one I've got. Ellie stared at her, green eyes blazing with the kind of fury that came from too much loss too young. Then she grabbed the laundry basket and stalked toward the house, leaving Clara kneeling in the dirt. Wade walked over. She'll come around. Maybe. Clara stood, brushing dirt from her skirt. Or maybe she's right to keep her distance. Might hurt less when I go. You planning on going soon? Clara looked out at the mountains, at the endless sky that made people feel both infinite and impossibly small. I don't know, she said quietly. For the first time in a long time, I don't know what I'm planning, and I can't figure out if that's terrifying or a relief. Wade understood that feeling better than he wanted to admit. Well, he said, long as you're here, you might as well help me with these chickens. They've been staging some kind of coup. Clara laughed, actually laughed, and the sound startled them both. It had been so long since Wade had heard a woman laugh in his house that he'd forgotten what it sounded like, forgotten what it felt like to be the reason for it. They worked on the chicken coop together, not talking much, just existing in the same space with shared purpose. And if Wade noticed that Clara's hands shook slightly when she handed him tools, or that she kept looking toward the road like she expected someone to appear, he didn't mention it. Everyone had ghosts. Some just had sharper teeth. But 3 weeks after Clara arrived, Wade's brother Cole rode onto the ranch. Wade was in the barn when he heard the horse, and something in his gut clenched before he even saw who it was. Cole only visited when there was trouble. Either he was bringing it or running from it, and either way, Wade usually ended up in the middle. He walked out into the sunlight and saw his brother dismounting, all swagger and worn charm, looking exactly like their father used to before the whiskey killed him. Cole was 2 years older, 2 inches taller, and had spent their whole lives making sure Wade knew both facts. "Little brother," Cole called, grinning, "looking rough as ever." "Cole." Wade didn't return the smile. "What brings you out here? Can't a man visit family?" Cole tied his horse to the rail and stretched, making a show of his travel weariness. "Heard you might need help with the ranch. Thought I'd see how you're managing." "I'm managing fine." "That so?" Cole's eyes drifted toward the house, where Clara was visible through the window, moving around the kitchen. "That why you've got strange women living with you?" Wade felt his jaw tighten. "She's hired help." "Hired help." Cole's grin widened. "Wade Mercer, hiring help. Never thought I'd see the day. Must be getting soft in your old age. Just needed an extra pair of hands." "I bet you did." Cole started toward the house, and Wade moved to block him. "Cole, leave it." "Leave what?" "I just want to meet this helper of yours. Make sure she's—" Cole stopped mid-sentence. Through the window, Claire had turned toward them, and even from 30 feet away, Wade saw his brother's expression change. The easy grin dropped. His face went pale, then red, then settled into something Wade couldn't read. "You know her," Wade said. Not a question. Cole didn't answer. He was staring at Clara like he'd seen a ghost, and she was staring back with an expression that Wade could only describe as trapped. The air between them crackled with something Wade didn't understand but recognized as dangerous. Then Clara turned away, disappearing deeper into the house, and Cole finally dragged his eyes back to Wade. "Yeah," Cole said, his voice rough. "Yeah, I know her." "From where?" "That's her story to tell, not mine." Cole ran a hand through his hair, looking genuinely shaken for the first time since he was 16. Jesus, Wade. Of all the people to wash up on your doorstep, do you have any idea? No, Wade cut him off. I don't have any idea. And if you're about to tell me something that'll make me send her away, then don't. I don't want to hear it. You need to hear it. Do I? Wade stepped closer to his brother. She's been here 3 weeks. In that time, my house has stopped falling apart. My daughters are eating real food, and I've slept more than 4 hours at a stretch. You want to tell me why I should care about whatever past she's running from? Because it involves our family, Cole said quietly. Because 5 years ago, she... Stop. Wade held up a hand. I mean it, Cole. Whatever happened 5 years ago doesn't matter now. It will when people find out she's here. Then people don't need to find out. Cole laughed, bitter and sharp. You think you can hide her? Out here? Everyone knows everyone's business. It's only a matter of time before someone recognizes her, and when they do, I'll handle it. Wade was surprised by the certainty in his own voice. Same way I've handled everything else since Sarah died. Cole studied him for a long moment. You're a fool, little brother. Probably. Wade turned toward the house. But I'm a fool with clean laundry and hot meals, so I'll take it. You staying for supper? You really want me to? Wade thought about it. Thought about Clara's face when she'd seen Cole. Thought about the way she'd disappeared into the house like a rabbit into a burrow. Thought about how whatever was between them was clearly bad enough that his brother had gone pale. No, he said honestly. I really don't. Cole nodded slowly. Fair enough. But Wade, this won't end well. Whatever you think you're building here, it's on sand, and when it collapses, I'll dig myself out, always have. Cole swung back into his saddle. Talk to her, he said. Ask her about Denver, about the Kellerman family, about what she did. I won't. Then you're a bigger fool than I thought. Cole turned his horse toward the road. I'll be in town if you change your mind. When you change your mind. Wade watched him ride away, dust rising in his wake, and felt the first real thread of doubt since Clara had arrived. He'd meant what he said about not needing to know her past. But standing there in the afternoon sun, watching his brother disappear into the distance, he wondered if ignorance was the same thing as trust, or if he was just too tired to care about the difference. That night, after Ellie was asleep and Rose was down, Wade found Clara sitting on the porch steps, staring at nothing. She had a cup of coffee going cold in her hands, and she didn't look up when he sat down beside her. Your brother's going to tell you, she said quietly. He already tried. I didn't let him. That got her attention. She turned to look at him, surprise clear on her face. Why? Because it's your story. If I need to know it, you'll tell me. And if I don't tell you? Wade shrugged. Then I guess I don't need to know. Clara laughed, but there was no humor in it. You're either the most trusting man I've ever met or the most naive. Neither. Just practical. Wade took the cold coffee from her hands and set it aside. Whatever you did, whatever happened, I don't care unless it affects my daughters. Does it? No, I'd never... She stopped, swallowed hard. I'd die before I let anything hurt those girls. Then we're done here. It's not that simple. It is from where I'm sitting. Wade leaned back against the porch railing. Look, Clara, I'm not stupid. I know you're running from something bad. I know my brother recognized you, and whatever history you two have, it's nothing good. I know there's probably a whole line of trouble following you, and one day it might show up on my doorstep. It will, she said. Not might. Will. Fine. Will. And when it does, we'll figure it out. But until then, he gestured at the ranch, at the house behind them where his daughters slept safe and warm. Until then, this is working, and I'm not ready to blow it up over something that happened in the past. Clara was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I don't deserve this. Deserve's got nothing to do with it. You're here. You're helping. That's enough. For now. For now's all any of us get, Wade said, echoing her words to Ellie. Might as well make the most of it. She looked at him then, really looked, and Wade saw something in her expression that made his chest tight. Gratitude, maybe. Or hope. Or just the desperate relief of someone who'd been expecting rejection and got acceptance instead. Thank you, she said. Don't thank me yet. You haven't met the full depth of my incompetence. That got a small smile. I've been here 3 weeks. I've seen you try to cook. That was your first mistake, watching me cook. Should have closed your eyes. Should have, she agreed. They sat there in comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds of the ranch. Cattle lowing in the distance, wind moving through the grass, the creak of the house settling. All the small sounds that meant home, that Wade had stopped hearing after Sarah died and was only now starting to notice again. Wade? Clara said after a while. Yeah. If I do have to leave, if the past catches up and I have no choice, will you tell Ellie I didn't want to go? Wade's throat tightened. You tell her yourself, when the time comes. If the time comes. If, he agreed, though they both knew she was right the first time. Clara stood up, brushing dust from her skirt. I should get some sleep. Rose will be up before dawn. Probably. She paused at the door. Your brother was right about one thing. What's that? You are a fool. But she said it gently, almost fondly. A kind fool, but a fool nonetheless. Wade watched her go inside, heard her quiet footsteps moving through the house. He stayed on the porch a while longer, looking out at the dark shape of the mountains against the stars, thinking about trust and risk and the difference between the two. His brother thought he was building on sand. Maybe he was, but sand was all the frontier ever gave you, and you either built anyway or you gave up and died. Wade had spent 8 months barely surviving, held together by routine and responsibility and nothing else. Clara had brought something back that he'd thought was gone forever. The possibility that tomorrow might be different from today. Better, even. If that was foolish, then he'd be a fool. At least it beat being dead inside. He went to bed that night and slept 6 hours straight. And if he dreamed of trouble coming down the road, he didn't remember it in the morning. But trouble was coming. It always did. Cole came back 4 days later, and this time he didn't bother with pleasantries. Wade was shoeing a horse in the barn when his brother's shadow fell across the doorway, blocking out the morning light. He didn't look up, just kept working the rasp across the hoof, steady and methodical. You talked to her yet? Cole asked. Nope. Wade, I said nope. Wade set down the rasp and straightened, wiping sweat from his forehead. And I meant what I told you last time. Her past isn't my business. Cole stepped into the barn and Wade could see he hadn't slept much. His eyes were red-rimmed, his jaw tight. It becomes your business when it drags you down with her. Nobody's dragging me anywhere. You don't know what she did. Don't care what she did. She destroyed a family, Wade. The Kellermans, you remember them? Patrick Kellerman ran the mining operation outside Denver. His wife, Martha? Wade felt something cold settle in his stomach, but he kept his face neutral. I remember. Clara was their governess, lived in their house for 2 years, took care of their kids, ate at their table, and then she ran off with Patrick's business partner, a man named Richard Bennett, took $5,000 from the Kellerman safe on her way out the door. The horse shifted, sensing tension. Wade put a hand on its neck, steadying it. That true? He called toward the barn door, where Clara had appeared, her face pale as milk. She didn't flinch from the accusation. Some of it. Which parts? I was their governess. I did run off with Richard Bennett, and yes, money went missing from their safe. Clara's voice was steady, but Wade could see her hands trembling at her sides. But I didn't take it. Richard did, and I didn't know until we were 3 days gone and he told me what he'd done. Convenient story, Cole said. It's the truth. The truth is you ruined that family. Patrick drank himself to death within a year. Martha had to sell the house, move back east with her kids. They lost everything, and you, Cole's voice cracked with genuine anger, you just kept running. I know what happened to them, Clara said quietly. I know Patrick died. I know Martha struggled. I know their children. She stopped, pressed her lips together. I know what I cost them, and I've lived with it every single day since. Wade looked between them, trying to sort truth from accusation. Why'd you run with Bennett if you didn't know about the money? Clara's laugh was bitter as ash. Because I was 19 years old and stupid. Because Richard was handsome and charming and told me he loved me. Because I thought running away was the same thing as being free. She met Wade's eyes. Because I didn't know the difference between a man who wanted me and a man who wanted to use me. And when you found out about the money, I told him to take it back. We fought. He said if I tried to return it, he'd tell everyone I was the one who stole it, that I'd seduced him into running away with me. Said nobody would believe a governess over a respected businessman. Clara's voice dropped. He was right. Nobody did believe me. By the time I convinced someone to listen, Richard was dead of cholera and the money was gone. Gambled away, drunk away, I don't know. All I know is I got blamed for all of it, and the only thing I could do was run. So you've been running ever since, Cole said. 5 years of running. How's that working out for you? About as well as you'd expect, Clara shot back, but at least I'm still trying to make something right. What are you doing, Cole? Besides dragging up the past to hurt people? Cole's face darkened. You don't get to talk to me about hurting people. You don't get to... That's enough, Wade said, his voice cutting through the barn like a blade. Both of you, that's enough. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. The horse stamped nervously. Somewhere outside, Rose started crying, and Clara's head turned toward the sound like a compass finding north. Go on, Wade told her. I'll finish up here. Clara hesitated, looking like she wanted to say something more, but then she turned and walked toward the house, her spine straight as iron, despite everything. Wade waited until she was out of earshot before turning back to his brother. You done?
Wait, you can't seriously spoil... I asked if you were done. Cole stared at him. You believe her? Just like that? I believe she's been here a month and hasn't stolen a damn thing. I believe my daughters are happier than they've been since Sarah died. And I believe that whatever happened in Denver 5 years ago, it's between her and the Kellermans, not between her and me. You're making a mistake.
Probably. Wade picked up the rasp again. But it's my mistake to make. This is my ranch, my family, my decision. And when the law comes looking for her, when someone else recognizes her and word gets around, what then? Wade met his brother's eyes. Then I'll deal with it. Same way I deal with everything else. Cole shook his head slowly. You know what your problem is, little brother? You're too damn stubborn to see when you're being played. And you know what your problem is? You're too damn angry to see when someone's trying to do better. Wade set down the rasp. Why are you really here, Cole? Because it's not about protecting me. You don't ride 40 miles twice in 1 week just to warn somebody about an old scandal. Something flickered across Cole's face. Guilt, maybe. Or shame. The Kellermans were friends of mine, he said finally. Patrick and I did business together. When everything fell apart, when he started drinking and losing everything, I tried to help. Lent him money I didn't have. Vouched for him with people who could have kept him afloat. And he drank it all away and died anyway, and Martha blamed me for not doing enough. So this is about you feeling guilty. This is about her. Cole pointed toward the house, destroying good people and walking away like it didn't matter. She didn't walk away like it didn't matter, Wade said. She walked away because staying would have gotten her hanged. And maybe she made bad choices. Maybe she was stupid and young and trusted the wrong man. But that doesn't make her the devil, Cole. It just makes her human. You're defending her. I'm defending the woman who lives in my house and takes care of my kids. Whatever she was 5 years ago, that's not who I see when I look at her. Cole was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice had lost its edge. She'll break your heart, Wade. Maybe not on purpose, but she will. Women like that, they can't help it. They're cursed with bad luck and bad choices, and everyone around them gets pulled down. Sarah broke my heart, Wade said quietly. Not on purpose. She just died. And I survived it. So if Clara breaks my heart too, well, at least this time I'll see it coming. His brother looked at him like he was seeing a stranger. When'd you get so damn philosophical? Around the time I had to bury my wife and figure out how to raise 2 daughters alone. Wade picked up the horse's hoof again. You staying for supper this time, or you just here to stir up trouble? I'm heading back to town. Cole moved toward his horse, then paused. For what it's worth, I hope you're right about her. I really do. But hope doesn't change facts, and the fact is, her past is going to catch up eventually. Everything catches up eventually, Wade said. That's just called living. Cole swung into his saddle, shaking his head. You're a stubborn bastard. Runs in the family. That got a small smile. Yeah, it does. Cole turned his horse toward the road, then looked back one more time. Take care of yourself, Wade, and watch your back. Some storms you see coming, others hit when you're not looking.
Wade watched him ride away for the second time in a week and tried not to feel like his brother was taking something important with him. Trust, maybe. Or just the simple comfort of family that didn't come with conditions. He finished with the horse and walked back to the house, where he could hear Clara singing to Rose, her voice soft and clear. Through the window, he saw Ellie sitting at the table, actually smiling at something Clara had said. Maybe Cole was right. Maybe this was all going to collapse. But standing there in the morning sun, listening to his house sound like a home again, Wade couldn't bring himself to care about maybes. The present was hard enough without borrowing trouble from the future. That night, after the girls were asleep, Clara found Wade on the porch again. It was becoming their habit, these quiet conversations in the dark, where the truth came easier than it did in daylight. "Your brother hates me," she said, sitting down on the step beside him. "He doesn't hate you. He hates what happened to his friends." "Same thing in the end." "Maybe." Wade looked out at the darkness. "You want to tell me your side? The whole story, not just the parts Cole knows?" Clara was quiet so long he thought she might refuse. Then she started talking, and once she started, it all came pouring out like water from a broken dam. She told him about growing up poor in Philadelphia, watching her mother work herself to death in a factory, about becoming a governess because it was one of the few respectable jobs available to a girl with more education than money, about the Kellermans, who'd been kind to her at first, treated her almost like family. "Martha Kellerman was good to me," Clara said. "She taught me how to manage a household, how to carry myself in society. She trusted me with her children, and I loved those kids like they were my own." And then Richard Bennett started coming around. Richard had been Patrick Kellerman's business partner, charming and sophisticated in a way that made a 19-year-old girl feel seen for the first time in her life. He'd paid attention to her, brought her books, asked her opinions, made her believe she was special. "I was an idiot," Clara said flatly. "I fell for every line, every lie. When he said he loved me and wanted to marry me, but we had to run away because Patrick would never approve, I believed him. When he said we needed to leave in the middle of the night, I went. And when I found out 3 days later that he'd cleaned out the business safe before we left, I finally understood what I was to him. Not a woman, just a convenient excuse." "What'd you do?" "I screamed at him, told him I was going back to Denver, going to tell the truth, and he laughed, actually laughed. Said if I tried, he'd tell everyone I was the one who'd seduced him, that I'd planned the whole thing and he was just a fool in love. Said with my word against his, nobody would believe the governess." Clara's hands clenched in her lap. He was right. When I finally did try to tell someone after Richard died, they looked at me like I was trash, a scheming woman who'd destroyed a good family. "But you didn't take the money." "No. I didn't even know where he'd put it. By the time he died and I went through his things, it was gone. All of it. And I was left with nothing but his name and his debts and a reputation so black I couldn't get work anywhere." Wade absorbed this. "So you've been running?" "Yes. For 5 years. Working whatever jobs I could find until someone recognized me or heard my name, and then moving on before they could throw me out. I've been a laundress, a seamstress, a cook, a farmhand. I've slept in barns and alleys, and once in a church basement where the preacher told me I was lucky he was a Christian or he'd have turned me into the law." She laughed, hollow and tired. "I've been Clara Bennett for 5 years, and I hate that name more than anything in the world, but it's the only one I have. What was your name before?" "Does it matter?" "No," Wade said honestly. "Just curious." Clara looked at him, studying his face in the darkness. "Clara Hayes, that was my real name. Clara Hayes from Philadelphia, daughter of nobody, governess to the Kellermans, destroyer of families." She said it like reciting charges at a trial. "That's who I was. Who I am." "That who you want to be?" The question seemed to catch her off guard. "What? You said that's who you were, who you are. I'm asking if that's who you want to be, because seems to me you get to decide that." "I don't get to decide anything," Clara said. "The past decides for me." "The past is dead," Wade said. "It can't decide anything unless you let it." "That's easy to say when your past isn't chasing you." "My past is sitting in a grave a mile from here," Wade shot back. "Every day I wake up and she's still dead. Every day I have to decide if I'm going to live anyway or just go through the motions until I can join her. The past doesn't get lighter, Clara.
You just get stronger carrying it. Clara was quiet. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. I don't feel strong. Nobody who's actually strong ever does. That's how you know it's real. She turned to look at him, and even in the darkness, he could see tears on her face. Why are you being kind to me? Because you're being kind to my daughters, because you make good coffee, because… Wade stopped, not sure how to finish that sentence. Because you're here and you're trying. That's enough. It shouldn't be. Well, it is. So you can accept it or you can keep arguing, but either way, that's the truth. Clara wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Cole's right, you know. I will bring trouble. Eventually someone else will recognize me, or word will get around, and people will come asking questions. And when they do, we'll handle it. We, Clara repeated. You keep saying we. That a problem? I don't know. I've been on my own so long, I don't know what we means anymore. Wade stood up, offering her his hand. She looked at it for a moment, then took it, letting him pull her to her feet. They stood there on the porch, hand in hand like children, and something passed between them that Wade didn't have words for. It means you don't have to carry everything alone, he said finally. It means when trouble comes, you've got someone standing next to you instead of running away. It means… He paused. It means you matter to somebody. That's what it means. Clara's fingers tightened around his. I haven't mattered to anyone in a long time. Well, you matter to Ellie, you matter to Rose, and you… Wade stopped himself, surprised by what he'd almost said. You matter to this place, to the ranch, to keeping things running. It wasn't quite what he'd meant, and they both knew it, but Clara didn't push. She just nodded and let go of his hand, stepping back. Thank you, she said. For listening? For not… She gestured vaguely. For not being like everyone else. Everyone else didn't have two daughters who needed someone like you, Wade said. I'm not noble, Clara. I'm just practical. Still, thank you. She went inside, and Wade stayed on the porch a while longer, trying to figure out what the hell he was doing. Cole was right about one thing. This was a mess waiting to happen. But Cole didn't live in this house. Didn't see the way Ellie had started laughing again, or the way Rose reached for Clara before anyone else, or the way the ranch itself seemed to breathe easier with someone caring for it properly. And Cole didn't know what it felt like to be drowning and have someone throw you a rope without asking questions first. Wade wasn't falling for Clara. He wasn't ready for that, might never be ready for it. But he was grateful for her, and that felt dangerous enough on its own. The next morning brought rain, the kind of slow, steady downpour that turned the ranch into a sea of mud and made every chore twice as hard. Wade was out checking on the cattle when he saw a horse coming up the road, moving slow through the rain. His hand went to his rifle before he recognized the rider. Tom Bradley, who owned the ranch 5 miles east, a decent man who mostly kept to himself. Tom, Wade called, waving him toward the barn. Get out of that rain. Tom dismounted, water pouring off his hat. He looked tired, worried. Wade, got a minute? Sure. What's wrong? Tom glanced toward the house, then back at Wade. Heard you got someone new working the place. Wade felt his spine stiffen. Word travels fast. Always does. Nothing else to talk about out here but each other. Tom shifted his weight. Thing is, I was in town yesterday and Cole was there, drinking more than he should, talking more than he should. What was he saying? He was telling anyone who'd listen about your new helper, about how she's got a past, about the Kellermans, about trouble coming. Tom looked uncomfortable. I don't care about gossip, Wade. What people did before they got here isn't my business. But Cole's stirring things up, and I thought you should know. Wade swore quietly. How many people heard him? Enough. By now, probably everyone in a 20-mile radius knows you've got Clara Bennett living at your ranch. Tom paused. That her real name? Bennett? It's the name she's using. Fair enough. Tom moved toward his horse. Look, I'm not here to judge. Just wanted to give you a heads up. People are talking, and some of them aren't being kind about it. Might want to prepare yourself. Prepare for what? Tom swung into his saddle. For questions, for suspicion, for folks who remember the Kellerman business and think they know the whole story. He settled his hat. And maybe prepare for the law. If enough people start making noise, the sheriff's going to have to look into it. Wade felt cold that had nothing to do with the rain. The sheriff? Tom, she didn't do anything illegal. I believe you. But if there's talk of stolen money and ruined families, the law has to at least ask questions. That's how it works. Tom turned his horse toward the road. Just thought you should know. Whatever you decide to do it quick. Once this kind of talk starts, it spreads like wildfire. He rode off into the rain, leaving Wade standing in the barn doorway with a knot in his stomach. He looked toward the house, where smoke was rising from the chimney, and he could just make out Clara moving past the window. She'd been right. The past had caught up, faster than either of them expected. Wade walked back through the rain, each step heavier than the last. He found Clara in the kitchen, kneading bread dough while Ellie set the table and Rose played with wooden blocks on the floor. It looked so normal, so peaceful, that for a moment he considered not saying anything, just letting them have this one last morning of ordinary. But Clara looked up and saw his face, and her hand stilled in the dough. What happened? Tom Bradley just left. Said Cole's been talking in town, about you, about Denver. Clara closed her eyes. How bad? Bad enough that everyone knows now, bad enough that the sheriff might come asking questions. Ellie stopped setting the table. What kind of questions? Wade looked at his daughter, then at Clara. Ellie, honey, can you take Rose to the other room for a bit? The grown-ups need to talk. No. Ellie's jaw set in that stubborn way she had. I'm not a baby. If something's happening, I want to know. Ellie, she stays, Clara said quietly. She has a right to know. Wade wanted to argue, but one look at Clara's face told him it wouldn't matter. She'd already made up her mind. Clara wiped flour from her hands and sat down at the table. Ellie joined her, sitting close enough that their shoulders touched. Wade stayed standing, feeling like he should be doing something but not knowing what. People in town know about my past, Clara said to Ellie, her voice steady despite the tears Wade could see forming in her eyes. They know about mistakes I made a long time ago, and they're going to think I'm a bad person because of those mistakes. Are you? Ellie asked bluntly. I don't know. I did bad things, even if I didn't mean to. I hurt people. And now those people are talking about it, and your father might get in trouble because I'm here. What kind of trouble? The kind where the sheriff comes asking why he's harboring someone with a bad reputation. The kind where neighbors stop talking to him. The kind where... Clara's voice cracked. The kind where I have to leave so it doesn't get worse. No, Ellie said fiercely. You're not leaving. Honey, I might not have a choice. There's always a choice. You said that. You said we always have a choice, even when it doesn't feel like it. Ellie grabbed Clara's hand. You chose to stay during the storm. You chose to help us. Now choose to stay. Clara looked at Wade, her eyes pleading for help he didn't know how to give. Your father should get to choose too. It's his ranch, his reputation. I can't ask him to risk that for me. You're not asking, Wade said. I'm offering. Wade, no, listen. He sat down at the table across from them. Cole did this. My own brother decided to hurt you because he's still angry about something that happened 5 years ago. That's on him, not you. And if people want to judge you without knowing the truth, that's on them. But this is my ranch, and you're part of my household, and I don't let people push around what's mine. I'm not yours, Clara said softly. You're under my roof. That makes you my responsibility, and I protect what's mine. Ellie nodded, satisfied. See? You're staying. It's not that simple, Clara said, but there was something in her voice that sounded like hope. When the sheriff comes, if the sheriff comes, we'll tell him the truth, that you're working here, that you haven't done anything wrong, that whatever happened in Denver was 5 years ago and doesn't have anything to do with now. Wade leaned forward. But Clara, you have to stay. If you run now, it'll look like guilt. It'll look like you have something to hide. I do have something to hide. No. You have a past you're not proud of. That's different. Everyone out here has that. The frontier doesn't ask where you came from, just what you're doing now. He paused. And what you're doing now is making bread and raising my daughters and keeping this place from falling apart. That's the truth that matters. Clara looked down at her hands, still dusted with flour. And if people won't accept that truth, then to hell with them, Wade said, and Ellie's eyes went wide at the curse. Sorry, honey, but it's true. People who judge without knowing the full story aren't worth worrying about. Your brother knows the full story, Clara pointed out. He still judges. My brother's carrying his own guilt about not being able to save Patrick Kellerman. He's taking it out on you because it's easier than admitting he couldn't fix everything. Wade stood up. But Cole doesn't live here. We do. And I say you stay. Clara stood too, facing him across the table. Why? Why are you doing this? Wade didn't have a good answer, or maybe he had too many answers and didn't know which one was safe to say out loud. Because his daughters needed her. Because the ranch needed her. Because somewhere in the past month, he'd started needing her too, in a way that had nothing to do with bread and clean laundry, and everything to do with the way she laughed at his jokes and listened when he talked, and made him remember what it felt like to be something other than just tired. Because it's the right thing to do, he said finally, which was true, but not the whole truth. Clara studied his face like she was trying to read something written there. Then she nodded, slow and decisive. Okay, I'll stay. But Wade, when this gets bad, and it will get bad, you have to promise me you'll protect yourself and the girls first. If it comes down to me or them, you choose them. Promise me. I promise, Wade lied, because he already knew he'd try to protect all of them and probably fail at it, but that was a problem for future Wade to deal with. The rain kept falling outside, washing away the dust and turning the world clean. Inside, Clara went back to her bread, and Ellie went back to setting the table, and Rose kept playing with her blocks, and for a few more hours they pretended that everything was fine. But that night, long after everyone else was asleep, Wade stood at his window and watched the road, waiting for headlights that didn't come yet but would soon enough. Trouble was coming, riding in on horseback or in a sheriff's wagon, or just in the form of whispered accusations that would spread like disease. He'd meant what he told Clara about protecting her. He just hoped he was strong enough to keep that promise when the time came. Because Cole was right about one thing. Wade was building on sand, and the storm that was coming would test every foundation he had. The storm hit 3 days later, rolling down from the mountains like something with teeth. Wade saw it coming that morning, the sky turning the color of old bruises, the air going still and heavy the way it did before the world broke open. The cattle knew it too, bunching together in the far pasture, restless and wild-eyed. He spent the morning securing everything that could blow away, hammering down loose boards, moving tools into the barn, checking the shutters on the house. Clara worked beside him without being asked, her hair whipping in the wind that had started to pick up. She didn't complain, didn't slow down, just kept moving with that determined efficiency that Wade had come to rely on more than he wanted to admit. It's going to be bad, she said, looking at the sky. Yeah. Wade tested the rope on the barn door. We get these sometimes. Come down off the mountains and hit like the end of the world. Usually blow through in a day or two. Should I take the girls to the cellar? Not yet. House is solid. We'll be fine as long as we stay inside. He glanced at her. You ever been through a Wyoming storm? No. Well, you're about to get educated. Wade headed toward the house. Come on, we need to get everything battened down before it hits. They made it inside just as the first drops started falling, fat and hard like thrown stones. Within minutes it was a downpour, rain hammering the roof so loud you had to shout to be heard. Thunder cracked overhead, close enough to rattle the windows. Ellie sat at the kitchen table, trying to look brave and failing. Rose was in her cradle, fussing at the noise. Clara went to her immediately, scooping her up and holding her close. How long will it last? Ellie asked, her voice small. Hard to say, Wade answered, checking the shutters. Could be hours, could be days. We've got food, we've got water, we've got shelter. We'll be fine. But even as he said it, he felt uneasy. Something about this storm felt different, meaner. The wind was already howling like wolves, and the temperature was dropping fast. Through the window, he could see the rain turning to sleet, ice mixing with water. By afternoon, Rose's fussing had turned to crying. Not the normal kind, but something sharper, more distressed. Clara walked her, rocked her, sang to her, but nothing helped. The baby's face was flushed, her forehead hot to the touch. Wade, Clara said quietly, and the fear in her voice made his stomach drop. He crossed the room and put his hand on Rose's forehead. The heat coming off her was like touching a stove. Fever, he said, trying to keep his voice calm. Could just be teething. Sometimes that causes fever. This isn't teething. Clara's face was pale. Feel her. This is too hot. Wade felt his daughter's skin again and knew Clara was right. This was the kind of fever that killed children out here,
too far from doctors and medicine and help. The kind of fever that had taken Sarah's brother when he was 6, burning him up from the inside until there was nothing left.
"We need to cool her down," Clara said, already moving. "Get me cold water, clean cloths. Ellie, I need you to help." Ellie jumped up, her fear transforming into action. Wade pumped water while Clara stripped Rose down to her diaper, sponging her with the cold cloths. The baby screamed at the shock of it, and the sound cut through Wade like broken glass. Outside, the storm intensified. The wind was screaming now, battering the house like it wanted to tear it apart. Sleet pounded the windows. The temperature kept dropping. "She's getting worse," Clara said after an hour of trying everything. "Wade, we need a doctor." "Nearest doctor is 15 miles away in town." Wade looked at the window, at the white chaos beyond it. "In this storm, it might as well be 100. "Then you have to try." Wade looked at his baby daughter, at her red face and labored breathing, at the way she'd stopped fighting and gone limp in Clara's arms. That was worse than the screaming. When they stopped fighting, that's when you knew you were losing them. "If I go out in this, I might not make it back," he said. "If you don't go, she might not make it at all." The words hung between them like a death sentence. Wade looked at Ellie, who was crying silently in the corner, her hands clenched so tight her knuckles were white. He looked at Clara, at the desperate determination in her eyes. He looked at Rose, at his baby girl who had Sarah's nose and his stubborn chin, and who deserved a chance to grow up and have a life. "All right," he said. "I'll go. But Clara, if I don't make it back by morning, you'll make it back. If I don't, you take the girls and you go to Tom Bradley's place. Tell him what happened. He'll help you." "Wade, promise me." He grabbed her shoulders. "Promise me you'll protect them." "I promise," Clara's voice broke. "But you're coming back. You hear me? You're coming back because these girls need their father, and I can't do this alone." Wade wanted to tell her she was stronger than she thought, wanted to tell her she could do anything, but there wasn't time. He pulled on his heavy coat, his hat, his gloves. The wind nearly tore the door from his hands when he opened it. The last thing he saw before the storm swallowed him was Clara's face, pale and terrified, framed in the doorway with his dying daughter in her arms. Then there was nothing but white and cold, and the certain knowledge that he might have just killed himself trying to save his child. The door slammed shut behind Wade, and the silence that followed was worse than the storm. Clara stood there holding Rose, feeling the baby's fever burning through the blankets, and tried not to think about what happened to children with fevers this high. She'd seen it before. In Philadelphia, in the tenements where she'd grown up, children got sick and burned up and died, and there was nothing anyone could do but watch and pray and wait. She'd promised herself she'd never watch another child die. But Rose's fever kept climbing. "Is she going to be okay?" Ellie asked, her voice shaking. Clara wanted to lie, wanted to tell the girl that everything would be fine, that Wade would bring the doctor, that Rose would wake up tomorrow laughing and healthy. But she'd spent 5 years lying, and she was tired of it. "I don't know," she said honestly, "but I'm going to fight like hell to make sure she is." She carried Rose to the bedroom, Ellie trailing behind her like a shadow. The wind outside sounded like it was trying to peel the roof off. Every few seconds, lightning would flash, turning the room white, followed by thunder that shook the walls. Clara laid Rose on the bed and started working. Cold compresses on her forehead, her chest, her feet, trying to draw the fever out through her skin. She'd learned this from her mother, who'd learned it from her mother, an unbroken line of women fighting death with wet cloths and stubborn hope. "What can I do?" Ellie asked. "Keep bringing me fresh water and talk to her. Let her hear your voice." Ellie nodded and ran to get more water. Clara kept working, changing the compresses as fast as they warmed up, checking Rose's breathing, counting her heartbeats. Too fast. Everything was too fast. An hour passed. 2. The storm outside became something biblical, wind and ice and darkness. The house creaked and groaned like a ship in rough seas. Somewhere in the back of Clara's mind, she registered that this was bad, that the house might not hold, that they might need to move to the cellar. But she couldn't leave Rose. Wouldn't. Ellie came back with more water, her hands shaking so badly she almost dropped the bucket. "She's not getting better," the girl said, and it wasn't a question. "No, she's not." "Is she going to die?" Clara looked at Ellie, at this 10-year-old child who'd already lost her mother and was now watching her sister slip away, and something inside her cracked open. "Not if I have anything to say about it," she said fiercely. "Your sister is a fighter, Ellie. She's got your father's stubbornness and your mother's strength, and she's not going to quit, and neither am I." What if Pa doesn't come back? The question Clara had been trying not to think about. Wade was out there in the worst storm she'd ever seen, trying to reach town through conditions that could kill a man in minutes. If the cold didn't get him, the ice would. If the ice didn't get him, his horse might throw him. If his horse didn't throw him, he might simply get lost in the white chaos and freeze to death within a mile of help. "He'll come back," Clara said, because Ellie needed to hear it, even if it was a lie. "How do you know?" "Because he loves you and Rose more than anything in the world. That kind of love doesn't quit." Clara changed Rose's compress again. The baby's breathing was getting shallower. "And because I asked him to come back, and your father's not the kind of man who breaks promises." Ellie was quiet for a moment. Then, "Do you love him?" The question hit Clara like a physical blow. "What?" "Pa, do you love him?" Ellie, we're not." Clara stopped, looked at the girl's serious face, and decided that now wasn't the time for evasion. "I don't know. I care about him. I care about all of you. But love? That's complicated." Mama said love wasn't complicated. She said you either felt it or you didn't, and the rest was just noise. Your mama was smarter than me. Yeah. Ellie moved closer to the bed, reaching out to touch Rose's hand. She was smart about a lot of things, but she was wrong about one thing. "What's that?" "She used to say that people who run away are cowards, that brave people stay and fight." Ellie looked up at Clara. "But you ran away, and you're not a coward. You're the bravest person I know." Clara felt tears sting her eyes. "I ran because I was scared, honey. That's not brave. You came back, though. To us. You could have kept running after Cole showed up, after people started talking. But you stayed." Ellie's voice was fierce. "That's brave. Staying when it's hard is way braver than staying when it's easy." Clara pulled the girl into a hug, holding her tight while the storm raged and Rose burned and Wade was somewhere out in the darkness, trying to save them all. "Your mama raised you right," she whispered into Ellie's hair. "I know," Ellie said. "But so are you." They stayed like that for a long moment, drawing strength from each other. Then Rose made a small sound, and they both turned back to the fight. The night stretched on forever. Clara lost track of time, lost track of everything except the rhythm of changing compresses, checking breathing, keeping the baby alive. Ellie helped when she could and cried when she couldn't, and Clara let her because sometimes crying was the only honest thing you could do. Around midnight, Rose started convulsing. Clara had seen this before too. The fever climbing so high it caused seizures, the body trying to shake itself apart. She held the baby down gently, keeping her from hurting herself, while Ellie watched with wide, terrified eyes. "What's happening?" Ellie screamed over the storm. "Her body's fighting the fever. It's okay. It'll pass. Just..." But Clara didn't know if it was okay. Didn't know if it would pass. She was making it up as she went, doing everything she remembered her mother doing, everything she'd learned from watching children die, and the few who'd managed to live. The seizure lasted maybe a minute, maybe an hour. Time had stopped meaning anything. When it finally ended, Rose went completely limp, and for one terrible moment, Clara thought she'd lost her. Then the baby took a breath, small and weak, but a breath. "She's still here," Clara said, and it felt like a prayer even though she'd stopped believing in prayers a long time ago. "She's still fighting." Ellie collapsed into a chair, sobbing. I can't watch this. I can't watch her die like Mama died." "Your mama died in childbirth," Clara said gently. "That's different. This is a fever, and fevers break. We just have to keep fighting until it does. What if it doesn't break? What if she just keeps getting worse and worse, and then we'll deal with that when it happens?" Clara met Ellie's eyes. "But right now, in this moment, she's alive. And as long as she's alive, there's hope. That's all we need. Just hope and stubbornness and each other." "I'm scared." "Me too, honey. Me too." The admission seemed to help. Ellie wiped her eyes and stood up, her jaw set in that way she had that reminded Clara so much of Wade. "What do you need me to do?" "More water, and..." Clara looked around the room. "And check the fire. We need to keep this room warm, but not too warm. The fever's making her cold, but we can't let the heat make it worse. Ellie nodded and went to work, and Clara went back to fighting. Somewhere around 3 in the morning, Clara realized the storm had changed. The wind was still howling, but there was a different quality to it now. More sustained, less chaotic. She risked a glance out the window and saw that the sleet had turned to full snow, coming down so thick you couldn't see 5 feet. Wade was out there in that, if he was still alive. She pushed the thought away. Couldn't think about Wade right now, could only think about Rose. About keeping this baby breathing until help arrived, or the fever broke, or the world ended, whichever came first. "Tell me about your mama," Clara said to Ellie, needing to hear a voice that wasn't the storm. Ellie looked up from the fire. "Why?" "Because Rose should know about her, and because I want to know about the woman who raised you." Ellie was quiet for a moment. Then she started talking, and once she started, it poured out. Stories about Sarah Mercer, who'd been a school teacher before she married Wade, who'd loved books and music and had tried to bring culture to the brutal frontier, who'd taught Ellie to read before she was 4 and had sung her to sleep every night until the day she died. "She was scared when she was pregnant with Rose," Ellie said. "I heard her tell Pa that she had a bad feeling about it, but she was happy too because she wanted another baby so bad, wanted me to have a sister." Ellie's voice cracked. "And then Rose came and Mama didn't, and now I'm supposed to love this baby, but sometimes I hate her because she's the reason Mama's gone." "That's normal," Clara said quietly, "and it's okay to feel that way." "It doesn't feel okay. It feels awful." "Grief usually does." Clara changed Rose's compress again. "But your mama wouldn't want you to hate Rose. She'd want you to love her, to help her grow up, to tell her stories about the woman she never got to meet." "How do you know what Mama would want?" "Because I'm a woman. And if I died bringing a child into the world, I'd want that child to be loved, not blamed." Clara looked at Rose's tiny face, flushed and fever bright. "This baby didn't ask to be born. Didn't ask for your mama to die. She's as much a victim of all this as you are." Ellie came over and looked down at her sister. Really looked, maybe for the first time since Sarah had died. "She does look like Mama," she said softly. "Around the eyes." "She does. And she has Pa's chin, that stubborn chin." "She definitely has that." Ellie reached out and touched Rose's hand so gently it might have been a breath. "Don't die," she whispered. "Please don't die. I need you. Even if I'm mean sometimes, I need you." Rose's eyes fluttered open, unfocused and glazed with fever, but open. She made a small sound, and Ellie started crying again, but this time it was different. Not fear crying, relief crying. "She heard you," Clara said. "You think?" "I know, and I think she heard your mama too." Clara put her hand on Ellie's shoulder. "Love doesn't end just because someone dies, Ellie. Your mama's still here, in you, in Rose, in every good thing she taught you, and she's fighting for Rose just like we are." "I wish I could believe that." "Then believe in what's right in front of you. Your sister's still alive, still fighting. That's worth believing in." They worked together through the dark hours, woman and child fighting death with nothing but water and cloth and desperate love. The storm raged on, shaking the house until Clara thought the walls might cave in. Twice she heard things crash outside, the wind tearing away pieces of the world. But inside, in that small room lit by lamplight, Rose kept breathing. And that was enough. Dawn came gray and mean, the storm still going but with less fury. Clara heard it before she saw it. The sound of hoofbeats, a shout, the barn door slamming. "Pa!" Ellie screamed and ran for the front door. Clara stayed with Rose, not daring to hope, not daring to move. If Wade had made it back but without the doctor, if he was alone, if he was hurt. The door burst open and Wade stumbled in, covered in ice and snow, his face red and raw from the cold. But he was alive, and behind him, carrying a medical bag, was an older man in a heavy coat. "Doctor's here," Wade gasped, his voice rough. "Is she—" "She's alive," Clara said, and Wade's knees nearly buckled with relief. The doctor pushed past them all, moving straight to Rose with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. He felt her forehead, checked her breathing, looked in her eyes. "How long has she had the fever?" he asked, already digging through his bag. "Since yesterday afternoon," Claire answered. "It's been climbing. She had a seizure around midnight." The doctor nodded, pulling out bottles and instruments. You did good, keeping her cool. Probably saved her life. Now, let me work. Wade pulled Clara aside while the doctor examined Rose. He was shaking, whether from cold or fear or exhaustion. Clara couldn't tell. You made it, she said stupidly, because her brain couldn't form anything more complex. Barely. Wade's hands found hers, gripping tight. Horse went down 2 miles from town. Had to walk the rest. Couldn't see anything. Couldn't feel my feet. Thought I was going to die right there in the snow. But then I thought about you here alone with the girls, and I kept going. Wade, let me finish. His eyes were red, exhausted, but burning with something Clara couldn't name. I kept going because I couldn't stand the thought of you facing this alone, of Rose dying without me here, of... He stopped, swallowed hard. Of never seeing you again. Clara felt her heart stutter. You were trying to save your daughter. I was trying to save all of you, because somewhere in the past month and a half, you became part of this family, Clara, and I couldn't lose you too. Before Clara could respond, the doctor interrupted. The fever's breaking, he announced, and the room went silent. Everyone rushed to the bedside. Rose's face was less flushed, her breathing easier. As they watched, her eyes opened, really opened, and focused on Wade's face. Da, she said. Just that one sound, but it was the most beautiful thing Clara had ever heard. Wade scooped up his daughter, holding her like she was made of glass, and started crying. Big, gasping sobs that came from somewhere deep in his chest. Ellie wrapped her arms around both of them, crying too. The doctor packed up his bag, looking satisfied. Clara stood apart, watching this family that wasn't hers, feeling something crack open in her chest that she'd thought was sealed forever. The doctor turned to her. You the one who kept her alive through the night? Yes, sir. Good work? Most people would have panicked, done the wrong things. You stayed calm, did everything right. He studied her face. You a nurse? No, just someone who's seen too many fevers. The doctor nodded slowly. Well, you've got the instincts for it. If you ever want work, the hospital in town could use someone with a steady hand and a cool head. Clara almost laughed. I don't think the town would want me working anywhere near their hospital. Why's that? She's Clara Bennett, Wade said quietly, still holding Rose. From the Denver situation. The doctor's expression didn't change. I heard about that. Heard a lot of different versions, actually. Funny how stories change depending on who's telling them. He looked at Clara. What I know is what I saw here tonight. I saw a woman who fought to keep a child alive when she could have run. That tells me more about your character than any gossip. He headed for the door, then paused. Storm's breaking up. Should be clear by afternoon. I'll check back in a few days, see how the baby's doing. He looked at Wade. You got yourself a good woman here. Don't let small-minded fools take that away from you. Then he was gone, leaving his words hanging in the air like smoke. Clara looked at Wade, who was looking back at her with an expression she couldn't read. Ellie was watching both of them with the kind of knowing look children get when they understand something adults are trying to hide. He's right, Wade said finally. You saved her, Clara. You saved Rose when I couldn't. You brought the doctor. You kept her alive long enough for the doctor to matter. Wade shifted Rose in his arms. I should have been here. Should have been the one fighting for her all night. Instead, I was out in the storm while you... While I did what needed doing, Clara interrupted. Same as you, same as Ellie. We all fought for Rose and we won. That's all that matters. Ellie tugged on Clara's sleeve. I told her what you said, about Mama still being here, still fighting for her. Wade's eyes widened. You told her about Sarah? She asked, Clara said, and Ellie had some things she needed to say. About how it felt, losing her mother and gaining a sister. Wade set Rose carefully in her cradle, making sure she was settled, then turned to Ellie. What did you say, honey? Ellie looked at her feet. I told Rose I was sorry for hating her sometimes, and that I was going to try to be a better sister, and that... She glanced at Clara. And that even though Mama's gone, we still have people who love us, people who fight for us. Wade pulled his daughter into a hug. You are a good sister, Ellie, the best. And your mama would be so proud of you. Would she be proud of you? Ellie asked, her voice muffled against Wade's chest. For letting Clara stay even though everyone's mad about it? Wade was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was thick. I hope so.
I think she'd understand that sometimes holding on to the past means losing the future. And I think she'd want us to be happy, even if that means things being different than they were.
He looked at Clara over Ellie's head, and in his eyes, Clara saw everything he wasn't saying. Everything that was too complicated and too soon and too real to put into words. The storm outside had broken. The wind had died down to almost nothing, and through the window, Clara could see the first rays of sunlight cutting through the clouds. They'd survived the night, all of them. And somehow, in the middle of fighting for Rose's life, something else had happened. Something had shifted and settled, like a house finding its foundation after years of instability. Clara didn't know what it meant, didn't know if it would last. But standing there in Wade Mercer's kitchen with his daughters, and the smell of medicine still in the air, and exhaustion pulling at every muscle in her body, she felt something she hadn't felt in 5 years. She felt like she'd come home. Rose slept through most of the next day, her breathing steady and her fever gone like it had never been. Clara sat by her cradle anyway, unable to shake the terror of watching a child nearly die in her arms. Every time the baby shifted or made a sound, Clara's heart would jump, waiting for the fever to come roaring back. Wade found her there around noon, still wearing the same clothes from the night before, her hair falling out of its braid. "You need to sleep," he said. "I'm fine, Clara." He put his hand on her shoulder, gentle but firm. "You've been up for almost 2 days straight. Rose is okay. The doctor said so. You can rest now. What if she gets worse again? Then I'll wake you up." "But she won't. Look at her." Wade gestured to the cradle where Rose was sleeping peacefully, her color back to normal, one tiny fist curled against her cheek. "She's through the worst of it." Clara knew he was right, but her body wouldn't believe it. Couldn't let go of the vigilance that had kept her going all night. "I keep seeing her convulsing," she said quietly. "Keep hearing that awful sound she made when she couldn't breathe right. What if I'd done something wrong? What if she died because I didn't know what I was doing? But she didn't die. You saved her. I got lucky." "No." Wade knelt beside her chair so they were eye level. "You were brave and smart, and you fought for her when I couldn't be here. That's not luck. That's who you are." Clara looked at him, at this man who'd risked his life riding through a blizzard for his daughter, who'd come back half frozen and exhausted and still found the strength to comfort her. His eyes were still bloodshot from the cold, his face still raw from windburn, but there was something in his expression that made her breath catch. "Wade, I need to tell you something," she started, but before she could finish, they heard horses outside. Multiple horses. Wade's expression changed, going from soft to guarded in a heartbeat. He stood and moved to the window, and Clara saw his jaw tighten. "It's Cole," he said, "and he's not alone." Clara's stomach dropped. She joined Wade at the window and saw Cole dismounting along with 3 other men she didn't recognize. One of them wore a sheriff's badge. "They're here for me," she said. "You don't know that." "Wade, your brother brought the sheriff. What else would they be here for?" Wade was already moving toward the door. "Stay inside. Let me handle this." "No." Clara grabbed his arm. "This is about me. You should stay with the girls," Wade said firmly. "Please, Clara, trust me to handle this." She wanted to argue, but Ellie had appeared in the doorway looking scared, and Rose was starting to stir in her cradle. Clara nodded and stepped back, watching through the window as Wade went outside to meet his brother. The conversation started quiet, but it didn't stay that way. Even through the closed door, Clara could hear voices rising. Cole's angry, defensive. Wade steady, but with an edge to it. The sheriff trying to mediate. The other 2 men just watching, their faces hard. Ellie pressed against Clara's side. "What's happening?" "I don't know yet, honey." But that was a lie. Clara knew exactly what was happening. The past had finally caught up, and this time there was nowhere to run. The front door opened and Wade came back in, his face carefully neutral. Behind him came Cole, the sheriff, and the 2 other men. The sheriff was older, maybe 60, with gray in his beard and eyes that had seen too much to be easily fooled. He took off his hat when he entered, nodding politely to Clara. "Ma'am, I'm Sheriff Morrison. These men with me are deputies from Denver. They've come a long way to ask you some questions." Clara's throat went dry. "About the Kellermans?" "Yes, ma'am." The sheriff looked uncomfortable. "Now, I want to be clear. You're not under arrest. They just want to talk. But I'd appreciate it if you'd cooperate." She doesn't have to say anything, Wade said sharply. She hasn't done anything wrong. One of the Denver deputies, a thin man with mean eyes, laughed. That's not what we heard. We heard she stole $5,000 and destroyed a family. That's a lie, Clara said, finding her voice. I didn't steal anything. But you ran off with the man who did, the deputy shot back. That makes you an accomplice in my book. Richard Bennett is dead, Clara said. Has been for 4 years. Whatever he did, whatever he told people, I can't defend myself against a dead man's lies. The sheriff held up his hand. Now hold on. Let's everybody calm down and talk about this reasonable-like. He looked at Clara. Miss Bennett, or whatever your real name is, Clara Hayes. Miss Hayes. These deputies have been tracking you for a while now. Seems Martha Kellerman has been asking the law to find you, see if she can recover some of the money that was stolen from her family. I don't have any money, Clara said. I've been working as hired help just to keep from starving. If there was money, Richard spent it or hid it or lost it years ago. That may be true, the mean-eyed deputy said. But Mrs. Kellerman thinks different. She thinks you and Bennett were in it together from the start. That you seduced him, convinced him to steal from his partner, and then ran off with the cash. She wants restitution, and she wants you to face charges for theft and fraud. Wade stepped between Clara and the deputies. You got any proof of these charges? Or are you just here to throw accusations around? We've got testimony from Mrs. Kellerman. We've got the timing. Miss Hayes here ran off with Bennett the same night the money disappeared. We've got motive, a poor governess who saw a chance to get rich quick. That's not evidence, Wade said. That's speculation. It's enough to bring her in for questioning, the deputy countered. And if she refuses to come voluntarily, we can make it official. Clara felt the walls closing in. This was it. The moment she'd been running from for 5 years. She could fight it, could claim innocence, could let Wade try to protect her. But in the end, it wouldn't matter. They'd already decided she was guilty, and nothing she said would change their minds. I'll go, she said quietly. No, Wade said immediately. Clara, you don't have to. Yes, I do. She looked at him, trying to memorize his face. If I run now, it'll just make things worse. And I can't. I won't bring more trouble to your family. You are family, Wade said, and the words hung in the air like something sacred. Cole, who'd been silent this whole time, finally spoke up. Wade, don't. Don't make this harder than it has to be. You did this, Wade said, turning on his brother. You brought them here. You couldn't leave well enough alone. I was protecting you, Cole shot back. Protecting your daughters from a woman who ruins everything she touches. She saved my daughter's life last night, Wade said, his voice deadly quiet. While you were in town drinking and spreading gossip, she was here fighting to keep Rose alive. So don't talk to me about protection, Cole. You don't know a damn thing about it. Cole's face went red. She's using you, Wade. Can't you see that? She's a con artist, a thief. She's the woman I love, Wade said, and the room went silent. Clara felt like she'd been hit. Wade, I love you, he said again, turning to face her. I know it's fast, I know it's crazy, but I love you, and I'm not letting them take you away without a fight. You barely know me. I know you stayed when you could have run. I know you fought for my daughter like she was your own. I know you make terrible coffee, and you sing off key, and you've got this stubborn streak that drives me crazy. Wade's voice cracked. And I know that when I thought I was going to die in that storm, the thing that kept me going was the idea of coming back to you. Clara couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Everything she'd told herself about not deserving this, about keeping her distance, about eventually leaving, it all crumbled in the face of Wade Mercer standing in his kitchen declaring his love in front of the sheriff and his brother and 2 deputies from Denver. This is ridiculous, the mean-eyed deputy said. Sheriff, we need to take her in. But Sheriff Morrison was watching Clara and Wade with something that looked like sympathy. Hold on a minute, he said. Miss Hayes, you got anything to say about these charges? Anything that might contradict what the Kellermans are claiming? Clara forced herself to focus. Richard told me we were leaving because Patrick Kellerman had found out about us and was going to fire me. He said if we ran away together, he'd divorce his wife and marry me. I was 19 and stupid, and I believed him. Her voice was steady, even though inside she was shaking. I didn't know about the money until we were 3 days gone. When I found out, I told him to take it back. We fought. He refused. Said if I tried to return it or tell anyone, he'd blame everything on me. Convenient that he's dead and can't contradict your story, the deputy said. Convenient for who? Clara shot back. He's dead, the money's gone, and I've spent 5 years being hunted for something I didn't do. There's nothing convenient about any of this. The sheriff rubbed his beard thoughtfully. What happened to Bennett? How'd he die? Cholera. We were in Kansas City. He got sick and died in 4 days. I buried him and moved on because there was nothing left for me there.
And the money? I never saw it. I looked through his things after he died, thinking maybe I could return it, make things right. But it was gone. He'd either spent it or hidden it somewhere. I don't know. Clara met the sheriff's eyes. I know how this looks. I know I ran off with him, and that makes me guilty in most people's eyes. But I didn't steal anything, and I've been paying for that mistake every day since. The sheriff looked at the Denver deputies. You boys got any actual proof she took the money? Witnesses? Bank records? Anything besides Martha Kellerman's word? The mean-eyed deputy shifted uncomfortably. Mrs. Kellerman is a respectable woman. Her testimony should be enough. Should be, but isn't, the sheriff said. Not in my jurisdiction anyway. Unless you've got hard evidence, all you've got is accusations from someone who's understandably upset about losing her husband and her money. That's not enough to arrest someone. So she just gets away with it? Cole demanded. She destroys a family and walks away free. I didn't destroy anyone, Clara said, her voice rising. Richard destroyed the Kellermans. Richard destroyed me. And every day I wish I could go back and make different choices, but I can't. All I can do is try to be better than I was. And you think shacking up with my brother makes you better? Cole's voice was full of contempt. You think playing house with his daughters erases what you did? That's enough, Wade said, stepping toward his brother. You need to leave, Cole. Now. Or what? You'll choose her over your own blood? Yes, Wade said without hesitation. Because she's been more family to me in 2 months than you've been in 2 years. Because when Rose was dying, you weren't here. Clara was. So yes, I choose her. Every time. Cole stared at his brother like he was looking at a stranger. You're making the biggest mistake of your life. Maybe, but it's my life, my choice, my mistake to make if it is one. Wade's jaw was set. Now get out of my house. Cole looked around the room, at Wade, at Clara, at the sheriff, and his deputies. Then he looked at Ellie, who was standing in the corner with her arms crossed, glaring at him with all the fury a 10-year-old could muster. You'll regret this, he said to Wade. Probably. I regret a lot of things, but Clara won't be one of them. Cole turned and walked out, slamming the door hard enough to wake Rose, who started crying. Clara automatically moved to pick her up, but the mean-eyed deputy blocked her path. We're not done here, he said. Actually, I think you are, Sheriff Morrison said. You've asked your questions, she's given her answers, and you've got no evidence to arrest her. So unless you want to camp out in my town for however long it takes to build a case that doesn't exist, I'd suggest you head back to Denver and tell Mrs. Kellerman that vengeance isn't the same as justice. The deputy looked like he wanted to argue, but his partner put a hand on his arm. Come on, Frank. We did what we came to do. Rest is up to the courts. There won't be any courts, the sheriff said firmly. Not without evidence. And I'm not holding someone based on 5-year-old gossip and a grieving widow's accusations. The deputies left, but not before the mean-eyed one gave Clara a look that said this wasn't over. The sheriff lingered a moment, putting his hat back on. Miss Hayes, he said, I want to be straight with you. People around here are talking. Some believe you, some don't. And Mrs. Kellerman might not give up easy. If she pushes this, if she gets a judge in Denver to issue a warrant, I'll have to bring you in. You understand? Yes, sir. My advice? Stay put. Don't run. Running makes you look guilty. And right now all you've got is your word against a dead man's. That's not much, but it's better than being a fugitive. He looked at Wade. And you, Mercer. You sure about this? About her? I'm sure, Wade said. The sheriff nodded slowly. Then I wish you both luck. You're going to need it. After he left, the house fell into heavy silence. Rose had stopped crying, content in Clara's arms. Ellie still stood in the corner, looking like she wanted to hit something. Pa, she said finally, did you mean it? About loving Clara? Wade looked at Clara, and she saw everything in his eyes. The fear, the hope, the absolute certainty of someone who'd made up his mind and wouldn't be swayed. Yeah, honey, I meant it. Good, Ellie said, 'cause I love her too,
And if Uncle Cole doesn't like it, then he's an idiot.
Ellie, Wade started, but he was smiling despite himself. That's not... You can't just... Why not? You said it first. You said Clara's family. So she's my family too. Ellie walked over and wrapped her arms around Clara's waist, careful not to squish Rose. And families stick together, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Clara felt tears streaming down her face before she realized she was crying. She held Rose with one arm and pulled Ellie close with the other and tried to remember how to breathe. "I don't deserve this," she whispered. "I don't deserve any of you." "Stop saying that," Wade said, crossing the room to them. He put his arms around all three of them, creating a circle of warmth and safety that Clara had never thought she'd have again. "You deserve every good thing, Clara Hayes, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving it to you." "Wade, you can't. I mean, we barely. You said you loved me, but we've never even..." Clara was stumbling over her words, her brain unable to catch up with everything that had happened in the last 10 minutes. "I know it's fast," Wade said. "I know it's probably crazy. But Sarah used to say that love wasn't something you planned. It was something that happened when you weren't looking. And I wasn't looking, Clara. I was just trying to survive. And then you showed up, and suddenly surviving turned into living again. But what if Cole's right? What if I bring nothing but trouble? Then we'll deal with it together." Wade pulled back enough to look at her face. "I'm not saying this will be easy. I'm not saying people won't talk or that the past won't keep trying to drag you down. But I'm saying I love you, and I want you to stay, not as hired help, not as the woman who takes care of my kids, but as my..." He stopped, looking suddenly uncertain. "Your what?" Claire asked, her heart pounding. Wade took a breath. "As my wife, if you'll have me." The room spun. "You're proposing?" "I guess I am. Is that crazy? It's crazy, isn't it? We've only known each other 2 months and..." "Yes," Claire said. Wade stopped mid-ramble. "Yes, it's crazy, or yes, you'll marry me. Yes, I'll marry you, you idiot." Clara was laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes to all of it. To you and Ellie and Rose and this broken-down ranch and whatever trouble comes next. Yes." Ellie let out a whoop that would have woken Rose if the baby hadn't already been wide awake and staring at all of them with confused interest. Wade kissed Clara right there in front of his daughters and anyone who might be looking through the windows. It wasn't a perfect kiss. Their faces were wet with tears, and they were both exhausted, and the angle was awkward with Rose between them. But it was real and honest and full of promise, and that made it better than perfect. When they finally pulled apart, Wade was grinning like he'd won something. "We should probably talk about this," Clara said, "about what it means, about how we'll..." "Later," Wade said. "Right now I just want to stand here with you and remember what it feels like to be happy." So they did. They stood in the middle of the kitchen with their arms around each other, Ellie pressed against them and Rose content between them, and let themselves be happy, despite everything. Outside, the sun was breaking through the last of the storm clouds, painting the snow-covered ranch in gold. It was the kind of light that made everything look clean and new, like the world was giving them a fresh start. Clara knew it wouldn't last, knew that tomorrow would bring new problems, new doubts, new reasons to be afraid. Martha Kellerman might still push for charges. The town might turn against them. Cole might never forgive Wade for choosing her. But standing in that kitchen, held by people who loved her despite knowing the worst parts of her past, Clara decided that maybe she didn't need forever. Maybe she just needed this moment, and the next one, and the one after that. Maybe that was all anyone ever got. A string of moments that added up to something that looked like a life. "Hey," Wade said softly. "Where'd you go?" Clara focused on his face, on the worry lines around his eyes and the gray in his beard, and the way he looked at her like she was something precious. "Nowhere," she said. "I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere." "Promise?" Clara thought about all the promises she'd broken, all the times she'd run when things got hard, all the people she'd let down. She thought about Richard Bennett and the Kellermans and the 5 years she'd spent believing she didn't deserve a second chance. Then she thought about Wade riding through a blizzard because his daughter needed him, about Ellie learning to trust again, about Rose's fever breaking just when Clara thought all was lost, about the way this family had opened their home to a stranger and made her part of them. "I promise," she said. "I'm staying, for good." And this time she meant it. That night, after the girls were asleep and the house was quiet,
Wade and Clara sat on the porch under a sky full of stars. The storm had cleared the air, making everything sharp and clean. The temperature had dropped, and Wade had brought out blankets, wrapping one around Clara's shoulders. "You really want to marry me?" Clara asked. "Even knowing that people will talk? That Cole might never speak to you again? That I might bring legal trouble down on your head?" "Yeah," Wade said simply. "I really want to marry you." "Why?" Wade was quiet for a moment, looking out at his land covered in snow. "After Sarah died, I didn't think I'd ever feel anything again except tired. I woke up tired, went to bed tired, spent every hour in between just trying to keep my head above water, and I figured that's how it would be until the day I died." He turned to look at Clara. "But then you showed up, and things started changing. Not all at once, not like some miracle. Just gradually, day by day, the house got cleaner and the food got better, and my daughter started smiling again. And one day I realized I'd woken up and didn't feel tired. I felt like maybe there was a reason to keep going besides just stubborn habit." "Wade, let me finish. I know I said I loved you earlier, and I meant it, but it's more than that. You make me want to be better, want to try harder, want to build something instead of just surviving." He took her hand. "And yeah, maybe it's fast. Maybe people will say I'm crazy, but I spent 8 months being careful and practical and responsible, and all it got me was loneliness. So I'm choosing you, and I'm choosing happiness, and to hell with anyone who doesn't like it." Clara squeezed his hand, unable to speak around the lump in her throat. "Besides," Wade added with a small smile, "you make terrible coffee, but you're the only one who can get Rose to stop crying. That's got to count for something." Clara laughed through her tears. "That's the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me." "Yeah? Just wait until we're actually married. I've got at least 2 or 3 more compliments stored up." "Only 2 or 3. I'm a rancher, not a poet. You'll have to take what you can get." Clara leaned her head against his shoulder, looking out at the stars. "What if I can't be what you need? What if I'm too broken, too damaged by everything that happened?" "Then we'll be broken together," Wade said. "Clara, I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm not even asking you to have your life figured out. I'm just asking you to stay and build something with me, whatever that looks like. Even if Martha Kellerman comes back, even if there's a warrant, even then, we'll fight it. We'll prove you didn't do what they're accusing you of, and if we can't prove it, then we'll deal with whatever comes." Wade's arm tightened around her. "But I'm not letting them take you without a fight. You're mine now, and I protect what's mine." "I'm not property," Clara said, but she was smiling. "No, you're not. You're family, and that's even more important." They sat there in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead, listening to the night sounds of the ranch. Somewhere a coyote called, and another answered. The wind whispered through the grass, carrying the smell of snow and pine. "When should we do it?" Clara asked. "Get married?" "Tomorrow, if we could. But I suppose we should wait a decent interval. Let people get used to the idea." "How long is decent?" Wade considered. 2 weeks? Month? 2 weeks, Clara said decisively. "I've waited 5 years for my life to start making sense again. I don't want to wait any longer than I have to." 2 weeks it is. Wade kissed the top of her head. "We'll keep it simple. Just us and the girls and maybe Tom Bradley as a witness. Don't need anything fancy." "I don't have a dress." "You could wear a flour sack and I'd still think you were beautiful." Clara snorted. "Now you're just being ridiculous." "Maybe, but I mean it. You're beautiful, Clara Hayes, inside and out, and I'm the luckiest man in Wyoming." Clara turned to look at him, at this rough, honest man who'd given her a second chance when no one else would. "I love you," she said, and realized it was true. Somewhere between the burned beans and the midnight fever and the storm that nearly killed them all, she'd fallen in love with Wade Mercer. "I know," he said, grinning. "I'm very lovable." She hit him with her blanket, and he laughed, and they sat there trading insults and kisses until the cold drove them inside. In the bedroom, Clara checked on Rose one more time. The baby was sleeping peacefully, her breathing steady, her color good. No sign of the fever that had nearly taken her. Ellie's door was cracked open, and Clara peeked in. The girl was sprawled across her bed, tangled in blankets, looking younger in sleep than she did awake. Wade appeared beside Clara, looking at his daughter with an expression of such fierce love it made Clara's chest ache.
She's going to be okay, Clara whispered. Both of them. We'll make sure of it.
Yeah, Wade said. We will. They went to their separate rooms, Clara to the small room off the kitchen, Wade to the bedroom he used to share with Sarah. It would be scandalous enough that they were getting married so fast. They didn't need to add fuel to the fire by sharing a bed before the wedding. But lying in the darkness, listening to the house settle around her, Clara felt a peace she hadn't known in years. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Cole would still be angry. The town would still gossip. Martha Kellerman might still push for charges. But tonight, Clara Hayes was exactly where she belonged. In a house with people who loved her. On a ranch that was starting to feel like home. With a future that looked nothing like the past 5 years of running and hiding. She fell asleep with a smile on her face and dreamed of weddings and starlight and second chances that actually stuck. The 2 weeks before the wedding passed in a blur of work and whispers. Clara felt the weight of every stare when she rode into town with Wade, heard the conversations that stopped when she entered the general store, saw the way some people crossed the street to avoid her. But there were surprises too. Tom Bradley's wife Emma showed up at the ranch 3 days after the proposal with a basket of preserves and a worn but beautiful quilt. "Heard you're marrying Wade," she said, not beating around the bush. "Figured you could use something for your new life together." Clara had stared at the quilt, at the careful stitching and faded patterns, unable to speak. "My grandmother made it," Emma continued. "Brought it west when she came out here 50 years ago. She always said it brought her luck, and I figure you could use some of that." She'd looked Clara straight in the eye. "I don't care what people say about you. I saw what you did for Rose during that storm. A woman who fights that hard for a child that isn't hers is a woman worth knowing." Clara had hugged her then, this near stranger who'd shown her more kindness than most people she'd known for years. Emma had patted her back awkwardly and then left, but the quilt remained, spread across the bed in Clara's small room like a promise that not everyone had already decided who she was. Not everyone was so kind. Clara overheard 2 women at the Mercantile talking about how Wade must be desperate or crazy to marry that Bennett woman. The postmaster refused to meet her eyes when she came to mail a letter. And one afternoon, someone threw a rock through the kitchen window with a note tied to it that said simply, "Leave while you can." Wade found her sweeping up the glass, her hands shaking. "Who did this?" he asked, his voice dangerous. "Does it matter? Half the town probably wanted to." Clara dumped the shards into a bucket. "Maybe they're right. Maybe I should leave before I ruin your life the way I ruined the Kellermans." "You didn't ruin the Kellermans. Richard Bennett did. And you're not leaving." Wade took the broom from her hands. "Clara, look at me. You promised you'd stay. Was that a lie?" "No, but nothing. People are going to talk. Some are going to hate you without knowing you. Some might even try to drive you away. But I don't care about any of that. Do you?" Clara thought about it, really thought about it. Did she care what strangers thought? Did their judgment matter more than the life she was building here? "No," she said finally. "I don't care. Not anymore." "Good. Because we're getting married in 10 days and nothing's going to stop that. Not rocks through windows, not gossip, not Cole, not even Martha Kellerman herself if she shows up with a pitchfork." Clara laughed despite herself. "A pitchfork?" "I don't know. Seems like the kind of thing an angry widow might carry." Wade pulled her close. "Point is, we're doing this, together. And anyone who doesn't like it can go to hell." The day before the wedding, Cole showed up. Wade was in the barn when his brother rode in, and Clara watched from the kitchen window as the 2 men faced each other. She couldn't hear what they were saying, but she could read the tension in their bodies, the way Wade's fists clenched at his sides. Then Cole did something unexpected. He held out his hand. Wade stared at it for a long moment before shaking it, and even from a distance Clara could see the stiffness in the gesture. But it was something, a crack in the wall between them. When Wade came back inside, he looked exhausted. "What did he say?" Clara asked. "That he still thinks I'm making a mistake. That he still doesn't trust you, but that you're going to be my wife, which makes you family, and he doesn't abandon family no matter how stupid they're being." Wade shook his head. "It's the closest thing to an apology I'm going to get." "Are you okay with that?" "No, but it's better than nothing." Wade sat down heavily at the table. He also said something else, about the Kellermans. Clara's stomach clenched. "What about them?" "Apparently Martha Kellerman remarried last month to a banker in Denver, a wealthy one. She's not hurting for money anymore." Wade looked at Clara. And she's dropped the request for the law to investigate you. Told them she wants to let the past stay in the past. Clara sat down across from him, her legs suddenly weak. She's done? Just like that? Cole thinks the new husband convinced her it wasn't worth the trouble. Or maybe she just got tired of being angry. Either way, the Denver deputies aren't coming back. Sheriff Morrison confirmed it this morning. So I'm free, Clara said, the words feeling strange in her mouth. After 5 years, I'm actually free. You were always free, Wade said gently. You just didn't believe it. Clara started crying and couldn't stop. 5 years of running, of looking over her shoulder, of believing she'd never escape her past. It all came pouring out in great gasping sobs that shook her whole body. Wade held her through it, not telling her to stop or calm down, just letting her grieve for the years she'd lost. When she finally quieted, her eyes swollen and her throat raw, Wade handed her a handkerchief. You know what this means? He said. What? You get to choose. For the first time in 5 years, you're not running from something. You're choosing to be here, choosing this life, choosing me. He smiled. So I'm asking you one more time, Clara Hayes. Will you marry me? Not because you're trapped, not because you have nowhere else to go, but because you want to. Clara looked around the kitchen, at the table where they'd shared so many meals, at the cradle where Rose slept, at the window Ellie had helped her repair after someone threw a rock through it. This house with its worn floors and patched roof and the smell of bread baking, this life that had seemed impossible just 2 months ago. Yes, she said. I choose this. I choose you. I choose all of it. The wedding took place on a clear Saturday morning with the mountains standing sharp and white against a blue sky that went on forever. They'd planned to keep it small, just family and a witness, but word had spread and people showed up anyway. Tom Bradley and his wife Emma came, along with their 3 kids. The doctor who'd saved Rose's life rode out from town. Sheriff Morrison appeared in his best clothes, looking uncomfortable but determined. And to Clara's shock, a handful of other ranchers and their families arrived, people she'd only met in passing. Figured if Wade Mercer thinks you're worth marrying, that's good enough for us, one of them said, a grizzled cattleman named Peterson. Man's got good judgment about most things. Don't see why this would be different. Even Cole came, standing in the back with his arms crossed and his face unreadable. But he came, and that mattered. Clara wore a simple dress that Emma had altered to fit her. Nothing fancy, but clean and pressed. Ellie had picked wildflowers that morning, weaving them into Clara's hair with fierce concentration. Rose was dressed in a white gown that had belonged to Sarah, and Wade had looked at his baby daughter for a long moment before nodding that it was right. There was no minister. The closest church was 30 miles away, and Wade had said he didn't need anyone's blessing but Clara's. So they stood under the open sky with Tom Bradley acting as witness, and made their promises to each other in plain language that meant everything. I promise to love you, Wade said, his voice carrying across the assembled crowd. To stand by you when things are hard. To build a life with you that's worth living. To be a good husband, and to never make you regret choosing me. Clara's turn. Her voice shook but held steady. I promise to love you and these children with everything I have. To stay when running would be easier. To be honest, even when the truth is hard. To build this home with you, and to never take for granted the second chance you've given me. They exchanged simple gold bands that Wade had bought in town, slipping them on with hands that trembled slightly. And then Wade kissed her, and people cheered, and Clara felt something settle in her chest that had been restless for 5 years. She was home. Finally, truly home. The celebration afterward was nothing fancy. Food people had brought, music from a fiddle that Tom Bradley produced from somewhere, children running wild across the ranch while adults talked and laughed. Clara moved through it all in a daze, being congratulated by people who a week ago had crossed the street to avoid her. Give them time, Emma said, appearing at Clara's elbow. People out here are slow to trust, but once you're in, and you just married one of their own. That makes you family whether they like it or not. Even with my past? Especially with your past. Emma smiled. Everyone out here is running from something, honey. The ones who judge hardest are usually the ones with the most to hide. You just owned your mistakes and kept going. That takes guts. Later, as the sun started to sink toward the mountains, Clara found herself standing apart from the crowd, watching Wade talk with Peterson about cattle prices. He caught her eye and smiled, and she smiled back. And the simple domesticity of it, being married, being part of these conversations about ordinary things, made her want to cry again. "You good?" Clara turned to find Cole standing beside her. He wasn't looking at her, just staring out at the same view she'd been watching.
"Yes," she said carefully. "I'm good. He loves you, really loves you. I can see it." Cole's jaw worked. "I still don't trust you, still think you're going to hurt him, but I'm going to try not to interfere anymore. That's all I can ask for."
"No, it's not. You can ask for more than that. You can ask for me to give you a fair chance, to judge you by who you are now instead of who you were 5 years ago." Cole finally looked at her. "And I'm going to try, because Wade asked me to, and because—" He stopped, struggling with the words. "Because I saw what you did for Rose. And my brother's right. That matters more than old gossip." Clara felt her throat tighten. "Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I'm still watching you, still waiting to see if this is real or if you're just using him." "It's real," Clara said quietly. "I love him, Cole. I love all of them. And I know you don't believe me, but I'm going to prove it. Every single day for the rest of my life, I'm going to prove it." Cole nodded slowly. "I hope you do. Because if you hurt him, if you hurt those girls, you'll kill me." "I know." Clara smiled slightly. "Get in line. Half the town is probably thinking the same thing." "Yeah?" Cole almost smiled back. "But I'm his brother. I get first dibs." He walked away after that, back toward the crowd, and Clara let him go. It wasn't forgiveness, wasn't even acceptance, really. But it was a start, and sometimes that's all you got. That night, after everyone had left and Ellie and Rose were asleep, Wade and Clara sat on the porch under a sky full of stars. She was wearing his ring, and he was wearing hers, and the reality of being married was starting to sink in. "You have any regrets?" Wade asked. "Only that I didn't find you 5 years ago. Would have saved a lot of running." Clara leaned against his shoulder. "What about you?" "None. Well, maybe one. I wish Sarah could have met you. I think she would have liked you." Clara had worried about this, about living in a dead woman's shadow. But hearing Wade say it, she realized he wasn't comparing them. He was just wishing two people he loved could have known each other. "I wish I could have met her too," Clara said honestly. "She raised an incredible daughter, and from everything Ellie's told me, she was a remarkable woman." "She was. But so are you." Wade turned to face her. "I loved Sarah. I'll always love her. But she's gone, and you're here, and I love you too. Those things can both be true." "I know." And she did know. Love wasn't a finite resource. The heart made room for what it needed. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds of the ranch. In the distance, a coyote called. The wind whispered through the grass. The stars wheeled overhead in their ancient patterns. "What do you think happens now?" Clara asked. "After the happily ever after part?" Wade laughed. "I don't think there's a happily ever after. I think there's just life. Some days good, some days hard, most days somewhere in between. We'll fight sometimes. Money will be tight. The cattle will get sick, or the fence will break, or Rose will get another fever and scare us half to death. That's just how it is." "That doesn't sound very romantic." "No, but it's real. And real's better than some fairy tale." Wade squeezed her hand. "I'm not promising you easy, Clara. I'm promising you real. Real love, real life, real family. With all the mess and complications that come with it." Clara thought about this. Thought about the difference between the fantasy she'd chased with Richard Bennett, all romance and adventure and escaping reality, and what Wade was offering her, a life rooted in dirt and work and genuine connection. "Real sounds good," she said. "Real sounds like exactly what I need." The months that followed proved Wade right. Life wasn't easy, but it was real. The ranch kept them busy from dawn to dusk. Clara learned how to mend fences and birth calves and manage the books that Wade had been neglecting. Wade learned how to let someone else carry part of the load, how to ask for help instead of drowning alone. Ellie thrived with 2 parents instead of 1. She grew taller, laughed louder, and slowly let go of the anger that had been eating her alive. She still had hard days, still missed her mother with an ache that would never fully heal, but she also learned that love didn't end with loss, that new people could come into your life without erasing the ones who left. Rose grew from a baby into a toddler, walking and talking and getting into everything. She called Clara Mama and Wade Papa, and had no memory of the fever that almost killed her. She was stubborn and fearless and loved horses more than anything, and watching her grow was a daily reminder of how close they'd come to losing everything. The town slowly accepted Clara. Not everyone. There were still people who crossed the street or whispered when she passed. But enough people gave her a chance that she stopped feeling like she had to prove herself every single day. She made friends with Emma Bradley and two other ranch wives, women who'd come west with their own complicated pasts and understood the value of fresh starts. Cole visited more often, though the relationship with Wade remained strained. He was civil to Clara, sometimes even friendly, but there was always a distance there, a wariness that might never fully go away. Clara decided she could live with that. Not everyone had to love her. Some people just had to tolerate her, and that was okay. One afternoon, nearly a year after the wedding, Clara was in the garden when a rider approached. She looked up, shading her eyes against the sun, and felt her stomach drop when she recognized the woman dismounting. Martha Kellerman. Older than Clara remembered, wearing widow's black despite having remarried, her face lined with grief and anger. Clara stood slowly, dirt on her hands and knees, and waited. Martha walked across the yard, her steps deliberate, and stopped a few feet from Clara. For a long moment, they just looked at each other, the woman whose life had been destroyed and the woman who'd been blamed for it. "I heard you married," Martha said finally, "that you have a family now." "Yes, ma'am." "Are you happy?" Clara didn't know how to answer that. Didn't know if she had the right to be happy when this woman had lost so much. "I asked you a question," Martha said, her voice sharp. "Are you happy?" "Yes," Clara said quietly. "I am." Martha nodded slowly. "Good. You should be. You didn't deserve what Richard did to you, what he did to any of us." Clara stared at her. "I don't understand." "I found something. Going through Patrick's old papers after I remarried, letters between Patrick and Richard from before you came to work for us." Martha's hands clenched. Richard had been stealing from the business for 2 years. Small amounts at first, then larger. He'd been planning to run for months before you ever showed up. And when Patrick started getting suspicious, Richard decided he needed a scapegoat. The world tilted. "What? You were convenient. Young, pretty, alone in the world. Richard courted you deliberately, made you fall in love with him, convinced you to run away. Also that when Patrick discovered the missing money, there'd be someone else to blame." Martha's voice was bitter. "He used you, Clara, just like he used all of us." Clara sat down hard on the ground, her legs unable to hold her. "You knew this. When the deputies came asking about me, you knew I didn't take the money." "I suspected. The letters confirmed it. But I was so angry, so hurt by everything that happened, that I wanted someone to pay. And you were easier to blame than a dead man." Martha looked away. "I was wrong. And I'm sorry. For the deputies. For the years you spent running. For all of it." "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because my new husband made me see that holding on to anger was destroying me, and because I saw you in town last month with your daughter, and you looked happy in a way I haven't been happy in years, and I realized that your happiness doesn't take away from my grief. They can both exist." Martha pulled an envelope from her pocket. "I wrote a letter to the sheriff in Denver, clearing your name officially, and I wanted you to know that I don't blame you anymore. For any of it." Clara took the envelope with shaking hands. "I wanted to help. After Richard died, I looked for the money to return it. I would have done anything to make it right. I believe you, and for what it's worth, I think you've made something good out of the wreckage. That matters." Martha turned to leave, then paused. Patrick would have liked that. He used to say that the measure of a person wasn't in their mistakes, but in what they built afterward. "You've built something worth having, Clara. Don't let anyone take that from you." She rode away before Clara could respond, leaving Clara sitting in the garden with dirt under her fingernails and tears streaming down her face. Wade found her there 20 minutes later, still holding the envelope. "What happened?" he asked, kneeling beside her. Clara told him everything, the words tumbling out between sobs. About Martha's visit, about the letters, about Richard's deliberate plan to use her as a scapegoat, about how she'd been innocent all along, not just of theft, but of the willful destruction everyone had accused her of. "I didn't know," she kept saying. "I thought I was guilty. Thought I deserved everything that happened. But I was just stupid and young, and he used that against me. Wade held her while she cried, and when she finally quieted, he said something she didn't expect. You were never guilty, Clara. Not of the theft, not of what happened to the Kellermans. But you know what? Even if you had been, even if you'd taken that money yourself, I'd still love you. Because people aren't defined by their worst moments. They're defined by what they do after. That's what Martha said. About Patrick. Smart man. Wade helped her stand. Come on, let's go inside. Tell the girls their mother's name is cleared. Their mother, Claire repeated, and realized he meant her, not Sarah. Her. That night at dinner, after they'd told Ellie about Martha's visit and shown her the letter clearing Clara's name, Ellie asked a question that had been coming for a while. Can I call you Mama? She asked Clara. I know you're not my real mama. I know Sarah was. But you're the mama I have now, and it feels weird calling you Clara when Rose calls you Mama. Clara looked at Wade, who nodded encouragement. I'd be honored, Clara said, her voice thick. But only if you want to. You don't have to call me anything you're not comfortable with. I want to, Ellie said firmly. You're my mama now. Sarah was my mama then. I can have both. Yes, Claire said, pulling the girl into a hug. You can absolutely have both. Later that night, after the girls were asleep, Wade found Clara on the porch again, their spot where they'd had so many important conversations. You okay? He asked. Better than okay. Clara turned to face him. Wade, I need to tell you something. Uh-oh, that sounds serious. It is, kind of. Clara took a breath. I'm pregnant. Wade's eyes went wide. Are you sure? Pretty sure. I've been sick every morning for 2 weeks, and I'm late. And yeah, I'm sure. Wade let out a whoop that probably woke the girls, then picked Clara up and spun her around, both of them laughing like idiots. We're having a baby, he said, setting her down. Our baby, mine and yours. Are you happy about it? Happy? Clara, I can't even... Wade kissed her, hard and fierce and full of joy. Yeah, I'm happy. They stood there holding each other, and Clara thought about how different this was from when she'd been with Richard, how there was no fear here, no uncertainty about whether she was wanted or valued, just pure happiness and the knowledge that this child would be born into a family that already loved it. What should we name it? Wade asked. How about we find out if it's a boy or girl first? Fair point. Wade put his hand on her still flat stomach. You think Ellie and Rose will be excited? I think Ellie will probably have opinions about everything, and Rose will be thrilled to have someone smaller than her to boss around. Wade laughed. Sounds about right. The baby came the following spring, a boy with Wade's dark hair and Clara's stubborn chin. They named him Thomas, after Tom Bradley, who'd been the first person to show Clara kindness. The birth was hard but quick, and when Clara held her son for the first time, she understood in a way she never had before why Sarah had been willing to risk everything to bring Rose into the world. Love made you brave in ways fear never could. Ellie took to being a big sister with enthusiasm, teaching Thomas songs and showing him how to identify different birds. Rose was less impressed with having to share attention, but she came around when Thomas started smiling at her like she was the most important person in the world. Cole showed up a week after the birth with a hand-carved cradle and an expression that might have been approval. Looks like you're building quite a family here, he said to Wade. Yeah, we are. Cole looked at Clara, who was nursing Thomas in the rocking chair Sarah had used. You did good, Clara. With all of this, I was wrong about you. Only took you 2 years to figure that out, Clara said, but she was smiling. I'm a slow learner. Cole tipped his hat, but I learn eventually. After he left, Wade sat down beside Clara and watched his son nurse. You ever think about how different things would be if you'd walked past the ranch that day? He asked. If you just kept going? Clara thought about it. About the woman she'd been, desperate, exhausted, convinced she didn't deserve anything good. About how close she'd come to not stopping, to just letting the frontier swallow her whole. Sometimes, she admitted. But then I look at this, at our life, and I can't imagine having missed it. Can't imagine not knowing Ellie and Rose and you. Can't imagine Thomas not existing. I think about it too, Wade said. About what would have happened if I'd sent you away that first day. If I told you I didn't need help and let you keep walking. He shook his head. We wouldn't have made it, the girls and me. We were drowning and didn't even know it. You would have figured it out. Maybe. But it would have been a lot harder and a lot lonelier. Wade reached over and took her free hand. You saved us, Clara, just by staying, just by being here.
You saved me too, Clara said, by giving me a chance when no one else would, by loving me when I didn't think I deserved it.
Everyone deserves love, Wade said. They just don't always find it.
No, Clara agreed, looking around at her home, her family, her life.
They don't.
Years passed. Thomas grew from baby to toddler to boy, wild and fearless like his sister Rose. Ellie turned into a young woman, beautiful and fierce, with her mother's intelligence and her father's stubbornness. Rose became the best horsewoman in 3 counties, able to ride anything with 4 legs.
The ranch prospered. Not rich, never rich, but comfortable enough. Wade and Clara worked side by side, building something that would last beyond them. They fought sometimes about money and parenting and the million small things married people fought about, but they always made up, always remembered what they'd built together. Clara never forgot where she came from, never forgot the years of running, the shame, the fear, but she stopped letting it define her, stopped believing that her worst moment had to be her whole story. One evening, nearly 10 years after she'd first stumbled onto Black Hollow Ranch, Clara stood on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. Wade came out to join her, his hair more gray now, his face more lined, but his eyes still warm when he looked at her.
"What are you thinking about?"
he asked. About that first day. When I showed up here with nothing but a torn bag and a lot of bad choices behind me. Clara leaned into him. I was so certain my life was over, that I'd never be anything but the woman who destroyed the Kellermans, who ran away with a thief, who couldn't be trusted. And now I know that the past doesn't have to be a prison, that you can make mistakes, terrible ones, and still build something good afterward. She looked up at him. You taught me that, you and the girls. You showed me that second chances are real, if you're brave enough to take them. Wade kissed her forehead. You did the brave part. I just gave you a place to do it.
You gave me more than that. You gave me a home, a family, a reason to stop running. Clara smiled. You gave me a life worth living. Inside the house, they could hear the children arguing about something, Rose's voice rising above the others. In a minute, Clara would have to go in and mediate. In a minute, real life would intrude with its demands and complications. But for now, she stood on the porch with her husband, watching the sun set over the land they'd built together, and felt grateful in a way that went deeper than words. She'd come to Black Hollow Ranch broken and desperate, believing she didn't deserve anything good. And somehow, against all odds, she'd found everything she'd never known she needed. Not perfection. Life was never perfect. But love and family and a home that felt like it had been waiting for her all along. That was better than perfect. That was real. And real, as Wade had told her all those years ago, was always better than any fairy tale. The mountains stood dark against the fading light, ancient and enduring. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, cattle to tend, children to raise, bills to pay, all the ordinary struggles of ordinary life. But Clara had learned something important during her years on the run, something she held on to now with both hands. The measure of a life wasn't in avoiding mistakes. It was in what you built after making them, in the people you loved and who loved you back, in the choice to stay when leaving would be easier. She'd made that choice every day for 10 years, and she'd make it again tomorrow, and the day after that, for however many tomorrows she was given. Because this was her life now, her real, messy, beautiful, imperfect life. And she wouldn't trade it for anything. Wade squeezed her hand, and together they walked back inside to their children, their home, their future. The door closed behind them, shutting out the coming darkness, holding in the warmth and light and love they'd built together. And in the end, that was all anyone could ask for. A door to walk through. People waiting on the other side. And the courage to keep choosing them day after day after day until choosing became as natural as breathing. Clara Hayes had spent 5 years running from her past, but she'd spent 10 years building her future. And the future she'd discovered was always stronger than the past. It just took time and faith and someone willing to stand beside you while you figured that out. She'd found that someone, found a whole family of someone's, and that made all the difference. The stranger who'd arrived at Black Hollow Ranch with nothing but shame and desperation was gone. In her place was a woman who knew her worth, who fought for what mattered,
who understood that redemption wasn't something you earned all at once, but something you lived into, choice by choice, day by day. And every morning when she woke up in this house, in this life, with these people who loved her despite knowing the worst parts of her story, she chose to stay. That was the real happily ever after. Not a destination you reached, but a decision you made, over and over again, until the choosing became who you were. Claire had finally stopped running, and in standing still, in planting roots, in building instead of fleeing, she'd found something she'd never thought possible. She'd found home.